as well.
Agenda item D, roll call. Council members Murphy,
Here.
Uomini, Lohr,
Here.
Dossetti,
Here.
Blake,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Pedroso,
Here.
and Mayor Thurston.
Here.
Item D2. In accordance with Government Code 54952.3, it is hereby announced that the City Council sits either simultaneously or serially as the Parking Authority and Public Financing and Economic Development Authority. City Council members receive a monthly stipend of $20 by charter for sitting as the City Council, and the Mayor receives an additional $50 each month as part of the adopted budget and Resolution 1975-37. The members of the Parking Authority and Public Financing and Economic Development Authority receive no compensation. For those of you who would like to hear the meeting translated into Spanish, we have an interpreter here and headphones are available by the podium.
Para aquellos que quisieran escuchar la junta directiva en español, hay un intérprete aquí y hay audífonos a la par del podio.
Agenda item E, report out of closed session.
There is no report out of closed session.
Agenda item F, ceremonial matters. Item F1, proclamation for Constitution Week.
Is there someone here to receive this? Good. Why don't you introduce yourself?
I'm Joanne Barkwell, and I'm secretary for our local chapter of the VAR, which is called the Merced River Chapter.
Thank you. Proclamation, whereas September 17, 2014 marks the 227th anniversary of the drafting of the Constitution of the United States of America by the Constitutional Convention. It is fitting and proper to accord official recognition to this magnificent document and its memorable anniversary, and to the patriotic celebration which will commemorate this occasion. Public Law 915 guarantees the issuing of a proclamation each year by the President of the United States of America, designated September 17 through 23 as Constitution Week. Now therefore I, Stanley P. Thurston, Mayor, do hereby proclaim September 17 to 23, 2014 as Constitution Week in the city of Merced, and ask our citizens to reaffirm the ideals that the framers of the Constitution had in 1787 by vigilantly protecting the freedoms guaranteed to us through this guardian of our liberties, remembering that lost rights may never be regained. Signed this date.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to present the Constitution. I'd like to share a Constitution. They are available at the library. Okay, and you should have it displayed.
Agenda item G, written petitions and communications. Mayor and council member, the city clerk's office is in receipt of correspondence from Mr. Lesh and correspondence from Mr. Hoffman regarding item K1, and a copy of both letters have been placed at the dais for you. Agenda item H, oral communications. There are no audiences members wishing to speak on items not listed on the agenda. Agenda item I, consent calendar.
Are there any items on the consent calendar that the council members want to remove for separate consideration? Seeing none, audience, are there any items on the consent calendar anyone in the audience wishes to remove for separate consideration? Seeing none, the chair will entertain a motion.
Move to approve. Second.
Motion and second. Mayor and council members, please cast your votes. And the motion unanimously carries. Agenda item J, public hearings. Item J1, consideration of the consolidated annual performance and evaluation report for program year 2013-2014.
Mayor and member of the City Council, I would like to recuse myself from this item due to conflict of interest.
Good evening. My name is Mark Hamilton, the Housing Program Supervisor. The action before this evening is the fiscal year 2013-14 CAPER. It's the fourth year of a 5-year consolidated plan that we're actually going through the stages for this fiscal year. The CAPER, however, basically looks at how the Housing Division oversaw 5 grants. 3 of them are federally funded and 2 are state funded. The nice thing with this report gets to give you the highlights and the successes of the program, of these grants. Our priorities for this last fiscal year were first-time home buyers, working with HUD staff to ensure program eligibility, continuum care, which is the homelessness, identifying homelessness issues and find ways to resolve those issues that do arise, as well as looking at rehabilitation of single-family properties and looking to provide funding for additional multifamily projects. This is one of the projects that we recently completed. It is a project that's located in South Merced. The house had been fully thrashed by previous landowners and by people that were frequently staying at the site. As you can see, the top 3 photographs were prior to rehabilitation, and the bottom 3 photographs are during and after or completion of the rehab of the project. As you can see, it's a much greatly improved project. It was previously tagged, and as you can see in the picture in the lower right-hand corner, that's how it looks today. Brand new garage door, green grass, and is an asset to the neighborhood. Basically, it was a year of rehab. Essentially, why I say it that way is we had a decrease in CG and home funds. We had a reduction of program income, and yet we were still able to have many successes. We rehabbed and resold 15 properties, rehabbed and resold 8 of those. 2 are currently in the market right now. We were able to provide loans to 14 first-time home buyers, as well as we worked with a lot of local organizations to provide assistance to either individuals or households. Accomplishments. This is a list of many of the different accomplishments that we had this past year. As you can see, we helped youth. We helped various populations in the community, from youth to seniors, to domestic violence victims, and to households that were looking at potential eviction. But due to assistance from our office, we were able to avoid basically them being removed from their property, to continue living at their house. Basically, this is the fun facts. This past fiscal year, we basically invested a little over $2.8 million in the community through these 4 different programs, which I think is really a true to the success of the housing program. Are there any questions of council?
Council have questions? Councilor Merced.
Mark, on page 14 of your draft, you talk about mental health Project Hope West Side. Where's that located, if it's not confidential?
The Gateway Terrace project, there are 10 units that mental health currently has a contract with Central Light Coalition to provide for occupancy. So that there are 10 units out of the Gateway Terrace park complex on 4th and Lesher.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions by council? Seeing none, I'll open the public hearing Does anyone in the public have any desire to speak on this? Have any questions? If you do, please approach the podium. Seeing none, close the public hearing and bring it back to the council. Is there a motion by council?
I'll move that we adopt Resolution 2014-43 and a motion authorizing the city manager to make the modifications.
Second.
Any further discussion? Call for the question.
Can you reset? I did it wrong.
So did I.
Oops. Okay. Motion in second. Mayor and council members, please cast your votes. And the motion unanimously carries with Councilmember Laura abstaining.
Thank you.
Agenda item K, reports. Item K1, Parsons Avenue Transportation Planning Priority.
Just wait. I want to do this a little differently. Since I'm the one that asked for this to be put on the agenda, I thought it was proper for me to tell everyone in some detail why I did that. Then we'll have council members want to talk at that time. They can. They can wait for the staff report after that. But I thought I'd get this started by giving away my motivations, I should say. This has been on in the general plan really since 1959. And recently, several actions were taken which kind of put it back in the front burner, if you will. One was purchase property right-of-ways, the paving of the Ada Givens Gap, and a negative declaration for the Bear Creek Bridge. That got everybody's attention. Obviously, it raised the interest of the neighborhoods, particularly between Bear Creek and Spetch Road. Significant number of homeowners have approached myself and maybe other council members strongly opposing the completion of this corridor, this arterial, or major thoroughfare. It's changed its names over time. So a quick history lesson. 1959, the general plan in Chapter 6 under circulation, major streets and highways. And I'll quote out of the plan. Parsons Avenue appears a logical street to handle north-south traffic from the residential developments which will occur in the southeast of the city. As stated elsewhere, a 94-foot right-of-way appears to be more than adequate for requirements which will be placed on Parsons. Study should be made of possible routes for Parsons from Yosemite Parkway north to Bear Creek and from Bear Creek to Olive Avenue. Now, it should be remembered at that time, this was the edge of the city. And this was actually described in other documents as the eastern edge of the beltway around Merced. And the 94-foot right-of-way at that time was categorized as a secondary thoroughfare. 4 traffic lanes, 2 parking lanes. That's a pretty big street, obviously. The 1968 general plan contained a number of recommendations for transportation circulation. One of the recommendations was, quote, major thoroughfares should not go through neighborhoods. Heavy traffic should go around neighborhoods and schools with feeders into them. In the then 1968, I should say, end quote. In the then 1968 proposal, Parsons is defined as a major peripheral street. Now there's no category for that right now, but that's still 4 lanes and 2 parking lanes at least. 1982 general plan, Chapter 6, Transportation and Circulation. Parsons is defined as a major north-south street. I couldn't quite find that definition either. But there were several policies set out in the 82 general plan. Policy 11 is to design improved streets to minimize impacts on residential neighborhoods and other adjacent land uses. Policy 14, every effort should be made to eliminate unnecessary cross-traffic and curb cuts and to improve traffic flow along major streets and expressways. You'll see pictures soon of driveways and dozens of curb cuts which don't belong on an arterial or a major thoroughfare. Policy 16, minimize the impacts of major thoroughfares on adjacent residential neighborhoods. So there's a recognition of large streets going through neighborhoods is not a good idea. Merced Vision 2015 General Plan adopted in 1997, at page 4-29, quote, "The community has periodically evaluated possible options to the prospective Parsons Avenue project of past decades. A workable alternative, or alternatives, to Parsons that would serve the community with reasonably equitable circulation capability within realistic costs have not been identified. Therefore, completion of this corridor remains the high priority." End quote. This same sentence appears in the new Merced Vision 2030 plan, even though many factors have changed related to the growth of Merced and the UC Merced campus along with the campus parkway planning. It seems that little or no effort has been given to considering alternatives to the Parsons project based on these changes. At the end of the presentation, I will offer what I consider a strong enough alternative that should warrant a new traffic study plan. So let's just take a few pictures, look at a few pictures of the neighborhoods that will be affected. Now let's pause on this one. I'm sitting next to Rahili Park, looking towards Chenoweth School. And you can see there's like a 2 to 3 block neighborhood where that yellow sign is that will lose, when they widen the street, trees, sidewalk, and a whole bunch of their front yard. I don't see how that works if you're going to do that. If you're going to widen the street with 4 lanes and 2 parking lanes. Next. This is the school, and here's the area on the right that would have to be eliminated. There's really nothing you can take on the school side, besides the road wouldn't be straight if you did. So that's a concern. I think the neighborhood is very concerned about losing half their yard. And again, you're having driveways back out onto an arterial. Next. Here's the neighborhood. This is between Bear Creek and Stretch. Next. This is the Chenoweth School. I'm sorry, that last picture was across from Ada School. This is just the corner of Ada where the school is. Next. I'm sorry, Chenoweth. Now we're between, from Stretch going back towards Bear Creek, which is a well-established neighborhood. Next. And this is the same on both sides of the street, all these homes. Next. Just gives you an idea of living in that neighborhood and having 4 lanes of traffic going 40, 50 miles an hour past your house. I just can't believe the city wants to do that to people. Next. And I think this is the last one. Go ahead, let's see. Yeah, this is where we started. Just a general idea of where all this high-speed traffic is supposed to go. Our new general plan, the major road system and rights-of-way and access spacing are discussed in 4-11. Quote, "The arterial grid system has 2 basic requirements if it is to be successful. 1, adequate right-of-way preservation to accommodate the amount of traffic expected from major future growth. And 2, strict access control to maintain efficient movement for the greatly expanded traffic. Well, access control is impossible with all these driveways. And this plan encourages maintaining speed in order to make it efficient. Maintaining speed through neighborhoods and past schools, which I think in the end would be 3. A minor arterial of 94 feet right away, there's supposed to be certain restrictions. Parking is generally not permitted, and generally no direct access to adjacent property. Right turn in, right turn out, local streets or combined access driveways may be permitted at the city's discretion at 1/8 mile points. Obviously, these driveways are much closer than 1/8 mile points. Seems to me this is violating the city's standards for creating a major thoroughfare or arterial, major or minor. There was a white paper included in the staff report, which I understand was written by a committee, I guess you'd say. And it speaks about the impacts if the Parsons project is eliminated. particularly the impact of public safety vehicles. I found this a bit strange since the project is only a plan. There's no corridor to be eliminated. The paper also speaks to previous studies and states, quote, for instance, according to the Parsons EIR prepared in the 1993 EIR, the no project alternative with significant adverse impacts on the circulation system of Merced. These impacts include extreme traffic delays on G Street, McKee Road, Yosemite Avenue, Olive Avenue, Yosemite Parkway, Childs, and Glen Avenue. Parsons project has not been built, and all those predictions over a decade have really not happened. The only extreme traffic delays are on Highway 59 between Buena Vista and 16th Street. The staff report also speaks of the cost of a new traffic study and perhaps a revised EIR. Do we keep spending money on a project that won't get the job done and will destroy neighborhoods? Should we spend millions of dollars in matching funds to grants to build a bridge or underpass instead of finding a better alternative? If we were designing an aircraft and found it wouldn't meet expectations, would it be a good reason not to alter the design because costs were involved? Of course, those answers are easy, I think. In 2 or 3 years, there may be other reasons to take a look at revising the general plan and potentially ER other than the Parsons project. Let's look at that one picture. This is kind of a Google Earth view. The pinkish properties is Golden Valley High School. And to the left is Parsons. And right below the school is Childs. And if you follow Childs, you'll see it runs right into the new campus parkway. So does the street at the bottom, which is Mission, runs into the campus parkway. If we're going to spend $50 or $60 million, if we had it, on a bridge and under a railroad, or would we spend it working on completing Campus Parkway? I think there's no doubt we're going to choose Campus Parkway. That's probably the highest priority piece of roadway where we have to work with for a lot of reasons, including jobs and getting traffic to the UC. All these houses and someday to be built homes in those areas, if they want to go north to the campus or north part of Merced, the distance between Parsons and the new Campus Parkway is a little over a mile. The grid system they've set out between R, M, G, Parsons is a 1 mile grid, mile, mile, mile. This would be mile, 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 2 miles. To think that all of these people are going to find themselves at Parsons and Yosemite Parkway trying to get to the north is, to me, asking for gridlock. There's already enough people who live up left into the upwards part who use other avenues to get to the northern part of the city, including Yosemite Parkway. Those who haven't been on the new Bradley overhead, which is now a beautiful 4-lane overpass with signals at each end, so those who want to turn left on Santa Fe and do this little crookedy thing to get to McKee will have a left turn signal. They won't have to sit there and wait for traffic. I think that's going to become a very favored way to get to North Merced is to use Yosemite Parkway to McKee. McKee already has a bridge. It goes all the way to Yosemite. Make a right turn, you're at Lake Road. Make a left turn, you're headed towards Merced College. It's not a big deal. That's why cars have signals to make turns. And there's a signal at Yosemite and McKee. So no traffic jams there, good traffic alert. So this is my alternative that warrants, in my opinion, a study to revise the EIR. And in the 2030 general plan at 313 in conclusion, it states, quote, each neighborhood in Merced has a distinctive character, depending on when it was built, the style and mixture of homes, and where it is located. Preserving the individual character of the city's neighborhoods is an important concern for Merced residents. But there currently exists no formal structure in which this can be accomplished. No formal neighborhood boundaries have ever been established within the city that makes addressing the concerns of individual neighborhoods makes it more difficult. Difficult, yes, but not impossible. Tonight and prior meetings are perfect examples of how the will of neighborhoods, through their residents, to maintain the character and safety of their neighborhoods are addressed in the absence of a formal procedure. If preserving a neighborhood is important to the residents, it should be of equal or even greater importance to those that represent them on this council. I would support moving forward as a policy decision by this council to eliminate Parsons as a north-south traffic corridor and fund a new traffic study aimed at the Campus Parkway and possibly McKee as a north-south corridor that would revise the general plan and possible revision to the EAR in a time frame of 2 to 3 years from the date of this decision. That is my very short presentation. Does council have any statements now, or do you wish to wait for the staff report? I don't see any lights. So, Mr. Ram?
Mr. Mayor and Council and audience, here to, as directed, to give the City Council the potential options that you have before you and general cost of what those options are. So obviously the Mayor has already indicated the purpose of tonight's meeting, which is for the City Council to provide us direction on the various transportation options or projects within the city. And obviously the two primary areas of focus is Parsons Avenue and Campus Parkway. So what I didn't try to do is this report is not intended as a determination on the adequacy of the general plan and its transportation element as it relates to the comprehensive system of arterial roads, but to give the City Council or the staff the direction that you wish to proceed in relationship to Parsons Avenue, the revision of the general plan, or the focus that staff has on the transportation projects that you want to pursue over the next 2 to 3 years. So we provide you with 3 options. There's obviously other options available. So option 1 is to establish Campus Parkway as the top transportation corridor project for the next 2 to 3 years for a new road grant funding, and for all new road grant fundings and the staff's effort, and thus look at other roads such as Highway 59, which we already have some congestion management air quality projects for the traffic signal and the widening of 59 close to 16th Avenue, but to try to get all of the transportation funding focused towards Campus Parkway. And obviously the purpose of that is our number one purpose in this organization for the last several years, other than trying to balance the budget, has been to focus our efforts on developing employment along Campus Parkway, both industrial as well as retail. Option 2 is really a general plan amendment, and Mayor, you stated it quite well. So it would be the council direction for staff to prepare for the fiscal year 2015-16 budget funding for a transportation element and the review of the comprehensive system of arterial streets and an environmental impact report. Could also be done in 3 years, which would be option 4, I guess. And then option 3 is to continue to pursue funding avenues for Campus Parkway, Parsons Avenue, and or Highway 59 in accordance with the general plan transportation element, which is kind of a status quo. So the budget for a new transportation element and environmental impact report could, I'm not saying it absolutely will, but could cost in the range of $300,000 to $500,000. And although not all of these are the definite consequences, because the transportation plan would have to evaluate that, new projects that come in before we start the general plan amendment could have additional mitigation measures related to their project, especially as it's in the northeast area of the community. There could be some public safety infrastructure and coverage considerations that the council would have to make, and there could be potential delays for annexations. They're not absolutes, they're just possibilities. And so, keeping it short, this is the City Council's time to provide us direction relating this issue.
Council have questions of Mr. Bramble? Councilmember DeSetti.
Yes, Mr. Bramble, can you explain, make a comment about what Parsons Avenue extension up to Bellevue would have to do with development of business and in that area?
So your specific question is what Parsons Avenue would have to do moving it all the way up to Bellevue?
All the way out to Bellevue near the UC.
And what would be its impact?
Impact as far as business development and bringing industry out there.
It really depends on the type of business. It also depends on how quickly we can get Campus Parkway moving, but because Campus Parkway comes closer to, I mean, it's obviously a longer term project, but it may add some mitigation, it may not. It just depends on what the business is and where it's drawing from and what the market analysis says.
Okay, and maybe you're not able to answer this, and Mr. Gonzalez here. During the general plan update process, were people in the Parsons area notified so that they could attend and voice opposition or support for it?
Well, there was community-wide notifications. It was a 7-year process. It only wrapped up, obviously, in 2012, and was here. So, I mean, there wasn't notices to specific neighborhoods, but general community-wide notices regarding the meetings.
And do you know if the school district was notified if they came to any of the meetings?
School districts were notified. They received a copy of the environmental impact report. Several of them came to the meetings. To our knowledge, from what we see from the records, the high school district did have comments. I'm not sure that the city school district, we can't find any that the city school district provided us, but they did give us a letter of support for the Ada Givens pass-through.
Thank you.
Councilmember Lohr.
Thank you, Mayor. John, can you repeat option 3?
Sure. So option 3 is essentially to continue to pursue funding avenues for Campus Parkway, Parsons Avenue, or Highway 59 in accordance with the general plan transportation element.
Was it in the agenda for us to approve tonight? I don't see that in the agenda for our approval.
Your agenda is for you to give us direction as to what the next steps are going to be so that we can proceed based upon the council's direction. So there isn't a recommendation. It's just giving us direction so that we can prepare for what you want us to do for the future.
Thank you.
Councilmember Pedroza.
I think this was addressed a little bit, but how would this affect development? If we were to go with option 1, I believe, in starting the whole process, that would essentially stall development, correct?
Well, I don't know if it's going to. I don't know that I'm qualified to say that it will stall development. That probably would have to be done based on a market analysis. Could it have some impacts on the northeast area of the community? Yes, based upon how they're going to look at how to get transportation from the northeast area to the southeast area down to Highway 99, and then what the resultant impacts will be of various roads, on various roads that do make that contact. So we're still looking for a mitigated negative deck for the Moraga development. There's some opinion out there that one of the requirements of the Moraga development might have been 4-laning McKee Road. So I'm still looking for that. Which obviously would be a mitigation measure. I'm sorry.
Right. Because this has been in there for so long, I assume that there has been impact fees or PFFPs paid into this. What would happen with the funds that have already been put into this by development? And would there be any recourse that we would have to pay those back, or would we keep those, separate them? I mean, how would the building industry?
Well, I know that the Building Industry Association has put us on notice that they will be reviewing our AB 1600 reports, which is essentially the public facility financing fees, and that they have talked to us on a couple of occasions, at least me, on a couple of occasions, and I'm sure they've talked to Mr. Gonzalez about the adequacy of the fees, and then have we expended them on the projects that we are proposing to do. So could they be subject to request for reimbursement? There's potential. And obviously if we were to take Parsons Avenue off of the general plan as an arterial, then we would have to take it out of the public facility financing plan as well.
It says, it's been discussed 4-lane, so 2 traffic plus 2 parking. But has there ever been any discussion about maybe 2-lane in certain areas and 2 bike lanes north-south? I mean, is that something that can be discussed as well?
Absolutely. I mean, staff has talked about other alternatives because of some of the challenges on Parsons. So we've talked about bicycle lanes. We've talked about instead of 4 lanes, 2 lanes. But that's something that the council is going to have to say you really want to look at in the future as alternatives.
Thank you.
Mr. Murphy. I just want to make sure I understand option 1. So option 1 is prioritizing Campus Parkway as the next project for the next 2 to 3 years. We didn't introduce Ms. Talley tonight, but she's our interim city attorney. Is John or Christina, the reason for 2 to 3 years, we got some analysis from Greg Diaz who said we couldn't really ignore the general plan. You can maybe say, you don't make progress on it for a couple of years, but what's sort of the legal background that we need to be thinking of?
Legal is definitely the city attorney's bailiwick, so I'm going to turn it over to Christina.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of council. The purpose or the rationale underlying an option of basically putting this project on hold, if you will, for 2 to 3 years is that the idea would be that council would be reprioritizing its projects, and that because of the reprioritization, there wouldn't be sufficient funds to continue to work on this project at this time. And therefore, we believe that no EIR amendment would be necessary. Now, of course, that doesn't preclude the challenge to this action, but we believe that that is not without risk, but a position that the city could take in light of the fact that it is reallocating funds to different aspects of its transportation element. And that's what the 2 to 3 years is designed to do.
So it's a lighter touch than saying it's a reprioritization rather than intentionally ignoring Parsons.
Correct. I mean,
It's kind of a much difference, but I mean that's
a lot different. But
I'm just trying to make sure I understand sort of the option here.
But we've always kind of looked at Campus Parkway as a long-term project that is rather expensive, and that the opportunity for federal dollars are far greater for Campus Parkway than they are for, say, Parsons Avenue. Parsons Avenue would probably qualify for some state grants, but not all. So what we would look at is, because the Tiger grant has not been approved, and at this point MAP 21 has not been reauthorized by by Congress and the President. And until we know what is in MAP 21, although we believe that Tiger grants will be a part of the MAP 21 project, there's no assurance. So as we've all talked, the importance of Campus Parkway would be our primary focus as to how could we finance the next leg of Campus Parkway from Highway 140 to Childs Avenue. And that's going to take some time and effort of the city staff. And so therefore we would focus all of our attention there at Parsons sit for that period of time, figure out what other alternatives there are for the comprehensive transportation system, and you may in 2 years say we still need to look at what the comprehensive transportation system is, and we'd like to come up with other alternatives as to just 1 mile grid.
If you keep ignoring it, I mean, I guess you create a pattern, right? So you have to really do the amendment. It sounds like if you long term don't want to do it, I think that's sort of the process, right?
But we haven't done much in 55 years. Can't we do very well the next 55 years?
I wasn't going to mention this, Mayor, but you actually approved several purchases of parcels.
I don't mind purchasing property. You can always sell
in the
that
right
and
away.
turn it into a park. I did oppose the paving of the gap, though.
You approved a number of purchases on Andreg Avenue.
I just told you why. But I did not. I voted no against the repaving or paving of the gap because you can't sell that.
I see the inconsistency.
If you want to see it that way, you can. But based on 55 years, not a lot done, I guess you'd say. If we were to prioritize Campus Parkway and Highway 59 and set certain milestones, such as Campus Parkway goes all the way to the campus, and 59 has 4 lanes from Bellevue to 16th, prior to any further work on Parsons, I think that'll take us another 55 years down the road.
Probably.
And probably end the uncertainty of all these homeowners that are worried in 2 or 3 years you're going to crank up another project and endanger their neighborhoods. Is that legally possible? To set milestones of priorities where you have to complete A, B, C, D, E, F before any further efforts done on Parsons?
Thank you, Mayor. The council certainly has discretion to prioritize its projects. The question becomes whether or not future development, for example, that relies on the existing general plan that contemplates Parsons Avenue being completed is a sufficient document to rely on in order to approve these documents. If the council has established a prioritization that effectively will not contemplates this street not being completed for a significant number of years. So I think that's one of the issues that the council needs to consider is how this type of very long-term prioritization affects the ability of projects to move forward under the existing general plan.
Yeah. I think at a minimum, if you were to do that, we probably have to revise the public facility financing plan.
That's not that hard.
Well, no, I'm not. I'm just telling you what I think you probably would have to do.
And I'm certainly not going to run the city by what that unspeakable character in Stockton who heads of BIA thinks. I won't get any more violent than that. But we've already had a couple of weird run-ins with him. So I don't think there's any way, shape, or form we can afford all three of these projects. Obviously, Campus Parkway with the UC is priority number one. 59 is already at saturation. Those bridges are dangerous, those little bridges. Caltrans several years ago did a complete EIR to 4-lane that entire section. However, their rules state that in order for them to spend the money to do that, it had to be effective for 20 years. And their analysis showed that after 14 years, it would be back at saturation on 59, even with 4 lanes. So that presumes, and at the time, AME wasn't in play, so there was not an alternate 59 to even think about at that time. If they redid it now, if you could talk them into it, maybe they'd have a different perception. But that's still local money, and there's no money for that either to connect the AME with anything else. So it's just the negative declaration for the bridge is kind of what turned the light bulb on. Like, we're going to go apply for a grant for that instead of either one of these other projects. And people came to me and said, what's they thinking there? That's kind of what got it back on the front burner was that. So I'll try to find, all of us could try to find anybody who's considering developing in the northern part of Merced that has any dependency and thought of Parsons being completed. Let's find him, but I don't think you're going to find anybody that's basing their development on Parsons being finished, particularly after 55 years of dawdling around with it. I don't think there's any confidence that it's going to get done with no money available. But I don't see how that could be any other way, but I guess it's possible. So if it's going to create a huge amount of money and whatever, and it's legally possible to create milestones on these other two projects before we do any more on Parsons, I think that'll outlive everybody in this room. Yes, sir.
Council direction.
Thank you. So if I understand correctly, and I agree with Councilmember Murphy, I'm not sure how we can say that we haven't done anything in 55 years. We've done some, of which my colleague mentioned. But I think that, we have done something. But if we took option one, and the reason why I stray away from option one, because what we're saying is if something comes available, then we wouldn't be able to strike when the iron's hot, if you will. Because what we're saying is take that out, even though we haven't said it's a viable that's the best alternative right now because we haven't really looked at one. So are you saying, we'll put this off, we'll continue to kick the can down the road, as opposed to if something comes available? So when the grant became available for the bridge, there was something that fit for that area.
It would only become available if we applied for it.
Correct.
Don't just drop in on us. So why would we apply for that bridge when we've got a safety issue on 59? That's what I'm saying.
I understand, and I appreciate your descriptions, but what I'm saying is I think that by limiting ourselves to just two things, we're really not looking at the future. We're saying we're going to confine ourselves, and then be that as it may, if we aren't successful or we're not going to look towards this. And I know you're saying no future development, but I would be surprised if current businesses in that area weren't somehow upset or weren't reliant upon or weren't told that by having this Parsons Avenue corridor would help their business.
Haven't
Meanwhile,
heard
the Merced
nobody said anything.
Rancho San Miguel, that shopping center over there, I think would benefit, and I think was told in the plan, if I'm not mistaken, that was something that was on the books.
Well, it definitely was on the books. And as to what they were told, I wasn't here when Rancho San Miguel did the development, but almost every retailer is going to look at the transportation system and its potential. And so, yes, I'm sure Rancho San Miguel would love to have Parsons Avenue opened up.
They haven't said a thing. I don't remember that even being consideration when it was approved. My preference would be to take it out of the general plan, period. Just not doing anything at all. Just not doing anything at all. Nobody asked the staff to go do the negative declaration. They did it all by themselves. That wasn't council direction. So I don't have a lot of faith that won't happen again. Somebody will slip in a grant request for the bridge over Bear Creek, and the council won't even know about it. That's happened already.
I would disagree with that statement.
What do you disagree about it?
Because even
the
though
fact or the future?
Even though this current council didn't ask for it, previous councils that have set priorities have asked for it.
Every time they come with some property to buy, oh, it's council direction from 20 years ago or 10 years ago. We've heard that over and over and over. That's what I want to put a stop to.
I appreciate your comments. I also appreciate the fact that you let everybody speak. So I would prefer that as well to let me finish my point. The fact that why is it that we schedule priority sessions, or why do we put stuff on the books, or why do we set our priorities? And if we're just going to abandon them because it doesn't fit this current system. I mean, if something was on the books, so economic development is on the books, and something comes up, well, it doesn't fit this neighborhood, even though it's zoned that way, we should get rid of it. I mean, I don't understand the.
Can I answer that question?
Please.
Why? Talk to those people. That's why it's their.
Well, let's
their
talk
house.
But we can also. When we talk about neighborhoods, we can also go back to the Walmart distribution center. I mean, there was a huge amount of contingency that came out that was against that because of the very reason that the Parsons area are fighting against, about you're disrupting neighborhoods, this is what you're doing. And I don't understand, I guess I can't see the difference between the two. We're looking at the same thing.
No, we're not running a 4-lane highway through their neighborhood.
We're putting a 24-hour distribution center.
That's not
Can we let the citizens to speak? Because we are discussing here probably all night.
Certainly. Is there any other council member that wishes to speak now, or do you want to hear from the public first? Okay.
Okay, Mayor, there are currently 11 audience members wishing to speak on this item. So will the following 5 people please come to the podium on your right, use the microphone and identify yourself. And if you have any documents to be distributed to council, please leave a copy for the record. Peter Padilla, John Hoffman, Steve Leonard, John Derby, and Mark Calls.
Good evening, Mayor, Councilman. I appreciate the opportunity to speak tonight. I've spoken to all of you in the recent past. And, we're up here tonight and we're arguing about some things that do affect the city. And I think it's important that we have this discussion. But there are just certain things that we need to put as the priority. Your number one priority, you have stated time and time again, is jobs. Where on Parsons are you going to find any jobs? All that Parsons Avenue is residential. There is no commercial. There is no industrial land. Mr. DeSetti has mentioned the extending Parsons all the way out to Bellevue. The Bellevue Corridor Plan has not been accepted by the city, and you have various amounts of property owners who may not agree to your plan anyway. So you're setting priorities for something that is in the county, is not in the city's bailiwick at this point. You have to look at what your priorities have been. Your number one priority has been jobs. Where are you going to get jobs? You're not going to get them on Parsons because there is no place to put jobs. Sometime in the future, that 55 years maybe before Bellevue is built out. I don't know because nobody knows. The city has made priorities, has taken the priorities of what roads to build and where to go time and time again. We sat here a month ago and discussed the priorities. Parsons was not on your priority list. I have looked back. I have not found Parsons on the priority list of any city council in the recent past. Yet, the city staff continues to do things as if it was on your list, taking precious money away from the priorities that you set. And that's why it has to come to a point. You have to decide, you have to direct the staff to follow what your priorities are. You are the elected officials. You are the people making decisions, not the staff. You need to take that job back. Safety. We've discussed safety time and time again. I've shown you pictures. I've shown you what the schools look like when they're at their peak. The danger to the children, the danger from the cars and the trucks. What are we going to do when we have heavy industrial trucks using that road? Because that's what you do when you put an arterial road in, is you open it up to all traffic, high-speed traffic. So please, we implore you, do not put our children at risk. If you were living on Parsons, would you want your child to cross that street? Please, take that into consideration. And then the benefits. What benefit is happening? You know, we talk about how to Parsons as a way to move traffic. What traffic are you going to move? Parsons is currently, and as far as I can see into the future, is serving neighborhoods. Neighborhoods come out onto Parsons and use it. You're not going to, all of a sudden have this huge amount of traffic coming onto it. So you're going to spend millions of dollars for no use when we need the money to go somewhere else. So tonight I ask you to make some decisions that save our neighborhoods, make our children safe, and continue with the idea that Merced is a city to live in, not just to use for some idea that has no point, has not had a point for 55 years. Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. I'm bad at extemporaneous speaking, and I had notes, and I'm going to try to just shoot it off the top of my head now, because listening to the mayor and listening to the people in the audience, basically it's something like a lynch mob. Anything that Pete Padilla said, who happens to, at least until now, has been my insurance agent. I don't know whether he'll let me in the office from now on or not. Anything he said goes double for me, except I live at 26th and 2nd Avenue on a street where the traffic has increased dramatically. One of the things that I had to say in here was, Pete talks about the fact that there is no traffic on Parsons. Of course there isn't any traffic on Parsons because the only people that drive on Parsons are people that live right there. The traffic from Parsons, the impacts of anybody that lives anywhere else in the city, that lives in the Parsons area, is coming down 26th Street, it's coming down Alexander Avenue, it's coming down East Olive Avenue, it's coming down Yosemite Avenue and Yosemite Parkway, it's coming down every other street in the city other than Parsons Avenue. Now, part of what I was going to be talking about tonight, I was an urban planner here for 31 years. I sat here, I went to more than 500 public meetings, most of them in an official capacity, and most of them from planning commission or city council meetings. I listened to Parsons Avenue over and over and over again. And almost always it was a lynch mob that was involved with it because the simple reason is state law requires that people within 300 feet of a project be notified. Now typically the city went out further than that, but it was still people along Parsons Avenue that were being notified about a Parsons Avenue project. Now the people that might live on East Alexander don't realize that Parsons Avenue traffic is going by their front door every day. And they're not motivated, but who's going to be talking to them about this? How are they going to come in here and be in here and provide any kind of dialogue that provides any kind of balance at all in terms of reason and balance? And that's what I'm going to throw out tonight, simply as far as there's not much else I can say. I'm really appalled in terms of listening to the comments that have come from up here, because basically these were comments that I don't think were appropriate. And after watching for more than 40 years that my wife and I have lived in Merced, most of that time serving the city as an employee of the city, being at these meetings, and not listening to things like this coming from the mayor. I'm really concerned about this project, and I'm concerned about the situation and the atmosphere and the attitudes that I'm listening to tonight.
Hello, my name's Steve Leonard. I live on Parsons Avenue. I have here in my hand a news clipping. Richard Bernasconi was mayor of Merced, and the Sun Star interviewed him. Mayor, and it's right here, Mayor Bernasconi, I'm quoting now, Parsons Avenue as a thoroughfare is a dead issue. It's alive. To the point, you probably have heard this before, there are 2 elementary schools, a church, 2 churches, a high school. There are 400 residential houses on Parsons Avenue. Yes, the majority of them have their backyards facing Parsons, but there are over 130 driveways on Parsons Avenue of those 400 houses. That is a residential area. If the city were truly intended to make Parsons Avenue an arterial, why are there 400 houses on that road? Caltrans will not let the city put an off-on ramp at the end of Parsons Avenue at 99. It's too close to the Childs Avenue off-on ramp. Yes, you cannot put an at-grade crossing for Parsons Avenue across the railroad. It either has to go underneath it or over it. That's big bucks. That's a little disjointed here, but bear with me. Then thinking of terms of all those schools, the houses and everything on Parsons Avenue, I have here impact 3.1 from the Environmental Impact Report. I think it was 93. It says that the corridor project would have a substantial, unavoidable adverse effects on the residential neighborhoods abutting Parsons Avenue, which would not promote the policies of the general plan pertaining to the protection of residential areas from environmental effects of major thoroughfares. That's quoting the EIR. Then back to my first page here. The Campus Parkway That area was also referred to as the Eastern Beltway Alternative in the EIR for Parsons Avenue. I think it was alternative number 7. And it was put down because it would primarily be a bypass of existing urban area and would serve to promote urban development in the area east of McKee Road. Well, we are going to develop the area east of McKee Road. Indeed, you have an entire new town planned east of Lake Road, and that is going to cause development from 140 or 99 all the way up that whole corridor, and you're going to need a major arterial to deal with it. Parsons Avenue isn't going to work for it. Why is the city continuing to trying to push stop and go traffic through a residential area? Other cities are working to their best efforts to bypass residential areas and build beltways around the city to get through traffic out of the center part of town. That would alleviate traffic on G Street, R Street, and M Street all by itself. People would go around to the beltway to get to wherever, to 99 or 140 or whatever. Even where I live, to get to 140, we go out Yosemite or South Bear Creek to get to Arboleta and then go to 140. We can't go through town. It's too busy. Too many stoplights. In the environmental impact report, they stated that the Eastern Beltway was unacceptable as an alternative to Parsons Avenue. To my mind, that means that the environmental impact report for Parsons has to be rewritten because you are building an alternative as stated in the environmental report for Parsons Avenue. That is your priority. I don't understand that. That's all I got.
Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, John Derby from the Merced County Times. I came to the city 54 years ago, and I was a reporter at almost 1,000 city council meetings. 1,000 city council meetings at which I can barely recall the subject of Parsons Avenue coming up. My impression is totally different than the former member of the city staff, because it was a mute subject for most of that 1,000 meetings. I respect the city council. I respect each one of you. I like you. And I want to take this opportunity to invite all of you in the city of Merced to the celebration of our 50th anniversary of the Times, which has tried to do its best to report the news of the city. I do have to admit I live on Parsons Avenue, and I've lived there for 32 years. It's a wonderful neighborhood. And I wanted to say something different than what I've heard before, because a lot of very intelligent comments have come out. My perspective is this. I work out at the sports club, and so I took the past week to just drive Parsons Avenue every chance I got to see what kind of a situation a thoroughfare on that street would affect. And I saw the children and the families crossing with their bikes at Rahili Park. The next day, I saw the school guards directing children and traffic to Chenoweth School. And I saw the parents lined up there trying to get onto the school grounds. And I know the city has already designated a different entrance for that school. But on Sunday, I watched the church get out and the school, the children from the church all dressed in their finery, running around and getting into cars on Parsons Avenue. I watched as I drove across Parsons Avenue and the number of houses that had their driveways backing out on Parsons Avenue from Olive Avenue down to Bear Creek. And then there's Bear Creek. And you got to have a bridge. And who's going to pay for this bridge? Are we talking about $10 or $20 million? I know there's been a mitigation about the bridge, but none of the vital agencies have approved this bridge, and I don't think they're going to. And besides that, what about that much money out of the city coffers going to pay for this bridge? When we had to lay off people that were of service to the residents? So then you get down, you suppose there is a bridge built, and then that takes you all the way down to Santa Fe railroad tracks, where you dead end right into Santa Fe. You're talking about another $30 million crossing Santa Fe railroad tracks. I don't think the Caltrans is going to let you do it. And it's certainly not going to be done in my lifetime. Once again, city funds potentially being earmarked for a program that is going no place. I think that when the city paid $300,000 for that property on Yosemite, that money could have been used to do an environmental impact on the Mission Interchange. And that would have some real value as far as jobs, building jobs for the city residents. We need those jobs. The city has designated Campus Parkway as a major priority. I'm amazed to hear Josh say that because it was designated Parsons was designated in the past as a priority, that it remains a priority forever. You're making the priority today, and thank you very much for listening to me.
Hello, council and audience members. My name is Mark Kales. I'm a resident that lives in the Ada Givens neighborhood. I moved to Merced back in '96, so I've been here about 18 years. And I grew up in Modesto. And one of the things I'm still impressed with to this day when I tell people about Merced is per capita, I think Merced's got more character. With the bike paths, the creeks, the walking trails. I've always been impressed with Merced, and unlike some of the neighbors here upset tonight about the traffic flowing through their neighborhoods, I'm probably one of the least affected directly from any of this because I live on a side street with a neighborhood that basically has no in and out other than getting to Parsons. So for me, directly, probably not as much as some of the other members here, but I do believe Parsons has too many problems and inconsistencies over the years to develop it further. I think the expressway that we're talking about tonight is the proper way to go because of the problems with the railroad as another dead end. And like the other members in the audience tonight have expressed, that's another 20, 30 million. Where's that money going to come from to get over the railroad tracks? And so I don't ramble on too much here. I'm going to try to read something I prepared. I typed, and I'd like to make a few more comments after that. But I basically said that I feel this impacts negatively the safety of hundreds of children attending local schools like Ada Givens Elementary and Don B. Chenoweth Elementary, some churches, as well as disrupting the quality of life, peace and harmony of long-established residents living along this street and surrounding neighborhoods. The increased speed and volume of commercial and industrial vehicle traffic would not only endanger pedestrians, but cheapen some of the very nice homes in the surrounding areas. The city already has other adequate plans to route traffic around with the UC Expressway under development. I feel the money could be better spent on other improvements the council deems worthy of attention to, such as local schools, parks, police, fire department needs. Also, the downtown improvements of the past with lighting, brick, and tile walkways, and the Art Kamiger Center have been great for beautifying Merced and making some historic buildings desirable for public use and business. I'm sure there are other good ways to use our money to do the community good in similar ways. Some street sections already widened on Parsons could have islands of plants and trees placed in the center to beautify and make Merced stand out as a Tree City member. I am sure drought-resistant trees and plants could be used to avoid water issues. That's just a thought. And basically, that's what I wanted to share. I mean, I realize the city has expanded Parsons in some areas where, what we're talking about tonight, stopping this project. And because some of those sections are so wide, a good example of what I'm trying to say, it's beautiful when you go down Olive. You see the island in the center, or G Street. I think that could be done on some of these sections of Parsons to not make it look like such a waste, and at the same time, maybe environmentally for our air quality, having some islands in the center of the street to beautify it and do something else. But I don't want to ramble on too much. Pretty much everybody said what I feel tonight. I feel that we need to stop the Parsons expansion and use this money wisely on 59 and the UC Expressway. Thank you.
Will the next 5 audience members please come to the podium? Susan Walsh, Kenra Bergonier, Don Bergonier, Sharon Zacconi, and Wayne Hill.
Good evening, council members, mayor, neighbors, other people in the audience. My name is Susan Walsh. I live at 1715 Mondo Drive. And I must say, this is the very first time in my life, on many intemperate occasions included, that I've ever been called part of a lynch mob. I love John Hoffman. John Mary Hoffman are a couple of my dearest friends, but I wouldn't characterize us as that. I would characterize the people who oppose Parsons as people who believe in the political process, people who believe in community, people who believe in Merced doing a good job by its residents and standing up to its core values. So I've written all of you. I'll kind of cut to the chase. Here's the deal. Parsons is going nowhere. The city will never afford to cross 140. They'll never cut a deal with Santa Fe. The property to the north along the Bellevue corridor is at the very beginning of a plan the city is running that has not yet received the support of the property owners there. We don't know if the Bellevue corridor is going to be a business corridor. There are people who are county residents who are pretty unhappy about the city making a plan for them. And so when you say that it's going to affect businesses along the Bellevue corridor, I say, well, what about us? What about those of us who pay taxes and send our kids to school and have bought our homes and back out onto Parsons? I'm particularly concerned about the children who go to the schools and be in the park. Now, come on, you're building, you say Parsons has been in the general plan since '59. How many things have the city councils of the past let be built along Parsons? Homes, driveways. I was around when you improved for Healy. Someone said to me, I won't say who it is because I like all of you. I'm kind of like, John, you're my friend. I admire what you do. I'm happy that you step up to public service. But somebody said, well, you would probably, how long have you been opposed to this? Did it start when you moved over on Mondo Drive? And the answer is no. I was opposed to the Parsons Bridge when I lived over past R Street. I was opposed to it when I lived on St. Thomas Court. I've always been opposed to the Parsons thoroughfare. That bridge is in the wrong place. It goes through neighborhoods. It goes past schools. It always has. Not going to create a job. Only going to cost the city more money. And for those people who say, well, it's a priority, well, it doesn't have to be your priority. That's why we elect people. We elect people to look at the situation now and where we're going. And where we're going is to the east of McKee and the west of McKee. Had the same diligence been applied to fixing the interchange at Highway 59 and cutting a deal with the county on McKee, we wouldn't be having this conversation. You're the leaders. You get to change your mind. And I've been around a long time. I've been in these chambers a very long time. And I'm kind of like John Derby. I think I've heard Parsons said like twice, kind of like, oh, Parsons. Anyway, you have a choice. And I want you to know the city school district isn't happy about this. We were in conversations with you before when we built that brand new multi-million-dollar building at Chenoweth. It didn't slow us down. We've got kids that go there, parents who drive there. I don't care where the driveway's going to be. Hundreds of parents, hundreds of children. And, not that this is kind of an aside, the city promised us all this traffic help with the Parsons Gap. And bless Tom McCall's heart, he is our traffic mitigation. He puts out the sign. Because those people race by there at 45, 50 miles an hour. If I see one more soccer kid, let's look on the bright side. They get to warm up before they get to the park because they're dodging cars speeding by. Anyway, back to the serious note. You're the leaders of this community. You have a chance to set priorities. The people in the past never made Parsons a priority. They did it piecemeal. They never saw it going through. You have a chance to set the course for the city. You have a chance to set a transportation plan that will protect neighborhoods, protect children, and get traffic around the heart of Merced. And I understand, John, I'm counting that traffic too, but it never occurred to me that going through by Brian Runner's house down there at Parsons and Alexander's going to solve my 2-minute problem getting to the college. Never occurred to me waiting for a biker to go across Bear Creek is going to save me any considerable amount of time. But it does concern me that you're thinking about letting trucks go 45 miles an hour past Chenoweth. That really bothers me. It bothers me that you guys can think of that. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Kenra Bergonier, and I'm a resident of Merced. I am here tonight to present my personal viewpoint on the Parsons Avenue discussions, doing so as a former city planning commissioner from 1978 to 1986, and as the owner of a home, which is the fourth house down from Parsons. And when my husband and I bought that property, I knew exactly what was happening there. I knew it was planned to be a significant major street. Traveling around other nearby cities where traffic circulation and congestion were problems, I wanted to participate in helping Merced avoid those problems as the population increased. That's one reason why I applied to be a planning commissioner. During my 8 years on the planning commission, there were multiple times. I sat there, so I know. There were multiple times that Parsons Avenue was discussed, including extensive review as part of the certification of the General Plan EIR and adoption of the General Plan, which included the transportation circulation element. A significant reason for selecting Parsons was it fits the north-south grid system because it was understood all that time back that as a community grew, it needed the north. It grew to the north, it had the need of another cross-town traffic carrier. That had to be in the plans for it to be predictable and fair to anybody coming after. A fit is the result of planning for traffic flow that is evenly and fairly distributed north and south through the city. The adopted Parsons Avenue Corridor Plan, importantly, served as the basis on which former and current property owners made their decisions. That is why it is critical to maintain Parsons Avenue in the general plan today. Current and potential conscientious property owners deserve to know what the future holds for property they own or that they may buy. There are ample reasons to keep Parsons Avenue as a crosstown minor arterial, not a major arterial. I wish there were enough time to enumerate all that I have, but I'll do a few. One, G Street, as I have heard the mayor comment, is already congested, especially during commute hours. 2, Parsons Avenue is the only viable option for a cross-town traffic carrier as it is completed, where there is truly the possibility of going from Girard to Bellevue Road or even to Old Lake Road. It would connect much of Merced with the anticipated growth and development should it occur along Bellevue Corridor. Campus Parkway is a little bit far east and was not intended to be a cross-town traffic carrier. Plus, it faces many of the same physical challenges as Parsons. McKee Road has barriers north at Yosemite and south at Bradley Overpass that eliminate it from being a cross-town street. An added challenge is the impact on those along McKee who have trusted that Parsons was to be the cross-town traffic carrier. Little has changed since the Planning Commission and City Council certified the EIR and the Merced Vision 2030 General Plan in January of 2012. An increase in public safety response times is another impact that could occur if Parsons is not filled in or extended, because we have a fire station already existing on Parsons and Silverado, and it was always intended that there would be one planned for Parsons and Girard with that direct access that would help response times. That's only going to get worse as the city grows, and I do believe our city is destined to grow. And last, impacts on those who live on or near Parsons would be the same impacts for residents living on or near any other street or road that is carrying or might be selected to carry north-south traffic. Planning for the future for growth is the most, if not the most important responsibilities of city staff and our elected officials. Anticipating what must be addressed to face the challenges of growth and minimize as many impacts as possible on the community as a whole, not just one small part, is our obligation to the future of residents of Merced. When city planners and the council have the foresight and the resolve to anticipate and plan for a better and more workable Merced, the whole community, we all benefit. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, City Council members, my name is Don Bergonier, and I live 4 houses off of Parsons on Oregon Drive. Same with her. Anyway, this weekend I do work at Stanford University periodically during the year. And Friday morning I was driving to Stanford, across the Dumbarton Bridge, turned on University to go up to Stanford. It was about 7:30 in the morning. And I'm driving along, and it dawns on me, this is a 4-lane road going through residential area, all the way through Palo Alto. People were bringing their garbage cans out just like we do. Cars were backing out of the driveway, going to work, wherever they're going to go. Kids were crossing at the traffic light signals with their backpacks, going to wherever the school is. And I thought to myself, this has more homes in this area of Palo Alto. And part of the area of Palo Alto, residential area, is kind of like going through the Ragsdale area, beautiful old homes. And I thought, this is a lot more homes and driveways coming than what we have on Parsons right now. And I've lived here my whole life, and I've driven down Parsons many, many times. Plus, Parsons is a lot wider than University Avenue. And the other thing is we had a business here for about 40 years, and it was a service business, and we had vehicles running all over the city, approximately 15 at the time. And I would have loved to have had Parsons Avenues for us to get across town, rather than going down G or McKee or R Street, because it would have made it a lot easier to get where we had to go. Thank you.
Oh, can I give these to okay.
Hello, I'm Sharon Zacconi, and I live at 1594 Santa Ynez Court. And Mr. Mayor and Council, I'd like to express my opinions about Parson Avenue. So a lot of them have already been said, and so I won't go over everything that I wrote in there. But I would like you to look at the photos I took of Parsons Avenue. Unfortunately, my printer quit working, but I have pictures of almost every hour. I took them every hour on the hour on Friday, starting at 7 in the morning to 7 o'clock at night. And I took them in both directions. I rode my bike over there and took my clock with me. And I looked, I guess it's north and south. I looked towards Olive, and I looked towards North Bear Creek. And you can see that there's hardly any traffic at all on Parsons throughout the day. I mean, we think there's a lot of traffic because either our houses back up to it or the sides backing up to it or the fronts facing it. So it's very noisy listening to the traffic go by. Even though there's not very much traffic, it seems like there's a lot more. So to me, this means that, we really don't need a bridge on Parsons because there's not very much traffic. And I've been retired for 2 years now, and I drive around all day. I mean, I don't drive around all day, but I mean that I go at different times of the day where before I used to just go before and after work around town. And I've noticed that on R, M, and G Street, the only time there's any problem with traffic at all is work hour traffic or lunch hour traffic. And even then, you don't have to sit through more than one light. I mean, you don't have to sit there for 2 or 3 lights like you might in a big city. So we really do not have a big traffic problem here. I think that some people are projecting way in the future, but it's not like that now. And the other thing is that we're talking about north-south traffic flow. Well, if you think about downtown, the traffic goes either G Street, M Street, or R Street because downtown is between those streets. Nobody would go down Parsons to go to downtown. Okay, so those are the 3 streets you would use. Our city is going north and northeast. So most of the people are moving there or live there now in apartments or houses. So most of those people aren't going to be traveling south unless they're going downtown to that downtown area for an event, or they're leaving the city because they have to work out of the city or whatever. So there's not really a lot of reason to go back and forth unless you're going to Costco on our street. Let's see, I lost my train of thought here. I know what it was. North Merced now has 2 colleges, one UC, one Merced College. Where do most of those people live? North Merced. We have 2 high schools, North Merced now. Where do most of those people live? North Merced. Then we have a high school, South Merced. So most of the people that used to travel across town to go to that high school now go to the high school in North Merced. So there's not a big draw for north-south traffic. As far as the market on Yosemite Parkway, it's really easy to get to it if you want to go from north to south. If you don't want to go down those 3 streets, you can go down McKee and get on Bradley Overpass like it was mentioned. It has a wide street now. Now I counted all the bridges that go across Bear Creek. There is 59, R, M, G, Arboleta, McKee, Kibbe, Orchard. And if you wanted to take Arboleta, you would only have to stop 2 times. You can get on Arboleta from South Bear Creek and go all the way to Childs Avenue, LeGrand Overpass, and get right on the freeway. There's only 2 stops. And you can also get to 140 off of Arboleta. And it's a real fast drive, and there's no traffic on it. I go on it every Thursday. And the other thing is, what about Bear Creek itself? Bear Creek is our environment, is our gift from God, the beautiful Bear Creek. Why would you want to impact Bear Creek? Really? And my time's up. Oh, one other thing. Back in 1993, I know my time's up, but there was a committee called Citizens for Quality Lifestyles in Merced. And they came here and talked to the then council. And the mayor, the city manager, and the council agreed that they were going to stop this whole thing back in 1993. There's 1,143 signatures here from 1993 that was presented to you guys. Well, you guys weren't here on the council at that time, so you didn't know about it probably. But, and I don't have the other information. I can't find it right now, but I probably will find it one of these days. Thank you.
Mayor Thurston, City Council, Wayne Hill, resident of Merced. This is more personal reflection because of my advanced age. I've been here for a long time, and I'd just like to give some remembrances of Merced as it used to be, and perhaps during the time of the development when it first began. I came here in 1967. I escaped from LA before they made the movie, but actually there were some similarities in my experience and experience of the movie. I lived in Whittier and I commuted into Los Angeles. I was continuing in my education. I sometimes would take freeways and thoroughfares and side streets depending on flow of traffic accidents, civil unrest, and Watts. And there are all kinds of reasons why one would have to be cagey and resourceful to move around the thoroughfares of Los Angeles. But I can tell on those experiences that moving through the thoroughfares that had been developed through neighborhoods or had been adapted after the neighborhoods had been established, the environment, the neighborhoods were greatly degraded. They were unkept. They didn't seem safe. A lot of noise, a lot of air pollution, and so forth. It was not a pleasant experience. We moved to Merced, fell in love with Bear Creek. I've lived on or near Bear Creek for 40 years. We built our first house on Bear Creek in 1971. At that point, the house now is city side of Parsons. At that time, we were the third house from the Key. It seemed like I was in the country, had the best of both worlds. I'd be out in the country, almond orchards surrounded me. I could take a 2-minute commute into Merced to my job. It was a wonderful life, but I was very naive. Now there are hundreds of houses around there, but I was only in my 20s, so you have to forget that. I've learned a little bit more since that time. But that was about the time when Merced had just turned 25,000 in population, about 1968, if I remember. And I can imagine why the city planners at that time thought that Parsons would be a good out in the country route to get through town at some point. But I don't think they had any idea that the development would occur there. That was never mentioned to anyone I spoke to, which is one of the reasons I built out in the country. So I'm hoping that the City Council now will make decisions based on current demographics and current development, things that about Merced we did not know before, but certainly would ask that you would not make decisions on data and projections that are over 50 years old. Thank you.
Will the next 5 audience members please come to the podium? Bill Spriggs, Judy Edwina Smith, Bill Baker, Rosemary Parga Duran, and Sean Kidwell.
Good evening. My name is Bill Spriggs, 1595 Santa Ynez. My property backs up to Parsons Avenue, directly adjoins Parsons Avenue. When my wife and I purchased the lot in 1984, we considered Parsons Avenue and the possibility of a bridge being built, and we made the decision to buy our lot anyway. Parsons is a fact. If you look at the majority of Parsons, it is a 94-foot right-of-way. The city has had foresight. The city has moved it incrementally. If you look at the G Street undercrossing, the reason we were successful in gaining funding for the G Street undercrossing was because the city had incrementally moved the project forward. We had done the EIRs, we had done the engineering, we were ready to go, and when money became available, we were able to move up several positions in line and bypass some communities that weren't ready. So I would implore the council to continue to move forward. There was an article a few weeks ago in the Modesto Bee talking about the Hellendale interchange in Modesto. If you go north on 99, they're building it right now. It's currently a 3-lane facility. They're expanding it to a 5-lane facility because the 3-lane facility was built in 1975 when Modesto's population was 65,000. Our population is 80,000. Is the bridge going to happen in the near future? Probably not. But is it going to happen at some point in time? Probably yes. And if the council decides to tell staff to stop, then staff will stop. But some future council is going to have to make the decision that the traffic has been impacted to the point that we need another north-south, and Parsons is the only logical place to do it because the 94-foot right-of-way is already in place. It's going to have to happen. Like it or not, I'm not thrilled about having more traffic on Parsons behind my house, but I was aware of it when I bought the lot. So it's a great project. It needs to continue to go forward. The G Street undercrossing was a $14 million project. Most of that money came from state and feds because we were ready. And I would implore you, make sure that we're ready, because in the future, it's going to be needed. This isn't going to happen next week. It's not going to happen next month. It's not going to happen next year. It's going to happen sometime in the future, though. Thank you.
Yes, my name is Judy Edwina Smith, and I live at 2181 Almondwood Lane, which is on the corner of McKee and Almondwood. The house in back of me is on Bear Creek, so the bridge is in my vision all the time. When I first thought to buy a house here, I'm a retired school teacher. I don't have big money to buy a big house. I bought a little house. But I looked at a house on Parsons, and I looked at a house on McKee, because my driveway backs into McKee. And I said, okay, I'm a pretty smart person. I would rather not live on a street that's going to be that wide and potentially have traffic. So I opted to buy the house on McKee Road. At that time, 37 years ago, this month, McKee Road was a little country road. Robinson Estates wasn't built. New Whitegate wasn't built. From Alexander to Olive was not built. The churches there on McKee were not built. And the Moraga, I think it is, subdivision up there was not built. Anyway, it was a little country road with a little bridge. Of course, as the years rolled by, Caltrans or whoever in their wiseness widened the McKee Road Bridge, and they widened McKee a little bit. However, McKee is still a smaller road. Parsons is half again yet wider. It was built to handle more traffic. I can speak to why there's not a lot of traffic on Parsons, because it's on McKee. We need to relieve the pressure on McKee, so I'm very much wish that that bridge was already built, and I'm hoping that maybe not in my lifetime, because I am a little old lady now. It might not be built, but it does need to be built because we need another road north-south. We just do. From McKee, you can't get further than Santa Fe anyway. You've got to swing around and go over the bridge. So Parsons could go to Santa Fe at least. If McKee is widened, and you mentioned something about making McKee a 4-lane road, that is just unconscionable. If that happens, I will be backing directly into traffic. I will have no driveway. Well, but I opted not to buy on Parsons because I knew, in my wisdom, I guess, it was going to go through and we'd have a bridge there. Oh well, didn't happen. I'm not against the Parkway. I think that's fabulous. When I did my little writings back in whenever I was asked many, many years ago, I suggested that we needed a beltway at that point, but I was thinking the beltway would go way out Beltway. That probably goes a long way down the road. So Campus Parkway, there's nothing wrong with that. I still think that we need help going north-south. And I'm a bike rider, so McKee Road has 2 lanes and bike lanes. There's really no place to widen it. But when I hear people talking about, oh, we'll just widen McKee, that absolutely terrorizes me. It shouldn't happen. When you've got a road that is already almost twice as big as McKee, right there, already built. It's just a no-brainer. Why don't you put the bridge across? So that's my perspective living on McKee. I don't have the deep pockets. I don't have all the political kind of stuff. This is just a little retired school teacher talking about how I would, like to keep my neighborhood quiet. And talk about traffic noise. Come stay with me on McKee Road. You'll hear some traffic noise there. Didn't used to happen. It was an almond orchard. So anyway, that's all I have to say, and thank you for listening.
Good evening, Mayor Stan Thurston and City Council. I'm Rosemary Parga Duran, Superintendent of Merced City Schools, and we have 2 concerns. One is increased traffic in front of Chenoweth, with widening the road and having the children cross, and 2, most of all, is student safety. That is critical, number 1 priority for the city schools, and we feel that widening the road and having more traffic on that road will increase those concerns. So I want you to remember that when you vote. Thank you.
My name is Bill Baker. Good evening, council members, Mr. Mayor. I wasn't going to speak tonight, but I heard a couple of things that just wouldn't let me sit by idly and not do anything. First of all, I want to say to you, patriots out here, you're not a lynch mob. You're citizens concerned about your government, and you're getting involved, and that's a good thing. And I haven't seen any uncivilness or whatever the word is from you for that, and I commend you for the professional way that you've conducted yourselves, and to me, you're patriots. You're not a lynch mob. Mr. Mayor, I appreciate all of the research and the comments that you made. And I'd like to say to Mr. Murphy, Councilman Murphy, that, as far as the double standard is concerned, you might have a different opinion of that later on. Because when that property was purchased, there weren't any alternative plans really seriously considered or discussed before this body. And that land was purchased in a time when our real estate values were considerably in the pits. But when it comes time to sell that property, should you decide not to do Parsons project, you might even make a profit on it. So you might then think he's a pretty savvy investor. My point is that, I beg the question, why? Why do we have to make Parsons a priority? Things have changed. We're not Palo Alto. Not yet. It's going to be a long time, and I won't be here when we are, and none of you will be. But back when the Parsons project was originally developed or thought about, contrary to what a lot of people think, there was no idea that there would be a UC campus in Merced. Nobody remotely thought about that. And so there are some alternatives that we need to consider, and sometimes general plans need to be changed to adapt to changes in communities that weren't foreseen. And so I implore you tonight to think about that when you're considering whether or not what option you want to consider. And I really don't believe that the Parsons Avenue ought to be considered, simply because there are other projects that should take a higher priority. Campus Parkway being one of them, and over on Highway 59 where the traffic is bottlenecked any time of day, all day long, and that very dangerous bridge that I cross over many, many times in a week when the CVC trucks are coming across and I have to close my eyes and hope that we make it. Okay? So that's a real important project that I think you need to consider and put as a higher priority than the Parsons Street. And maybe everybody thinks Parsons Street would be such a nice expressway through town. But things have changed since that was originally brought to our attention and originally discussed. And the big thing that's changed is the UC campus. So I really hope that you take into consideration those things when you make your decision or you talk about what priority you want to put on Parsons. And I want to say thank you to all of you, because every single one of you have given of your time for, I know you get a healthy paycheck every month, but I appreciate the debate, and that's what you're there for. I appreciate that you have the debate amongst you, and I consider every one of you my friends. I know all you personally, and whatever decision you come up with won't affect our friendship, but I hope you make the right decision.
My name is Sean Kidwell, 1586 San Luis Obispo Court, another one of those people who back into Parsons. I grew up in San Francisco, and then the remainder of my years at 1500 Middlefield Road in Palo Alto, half mile from University Avenue. And one of my neighbors did bring out that University Avenue is now 4-lane, and everyone's happy, and it's utopia. This is not true. If you can Google Earth it, if you don't believe me. University Avenue is a 4-lane in East Palo Alto, where they blew up that unincorporated part of the town to put in 4 lanes, because who's going to fight it? Nobody. Nobody cares. University Avenue will never, ever be a 4-lane avenue from San Francisco Creek to the university. And that city council saw to that in the 20s. And that's just the way it is. That's how they run that town. My impression is this. Is it too difficult? It's too costly to change the general plan. We successfully ignored or marginalized this plan for 50 some odd years now. My impression is there's some unknown developer lurking in the wings. Cui bono? Who benefits? The 400 some odd residents on Parsons will not benefit. And we've covered that in great detail, and there's no reason for me to go further on that. Parsons already has systemic issues as it is. I mean, it's, to the Don Beach Center with Pinch all the way to the Yosemite Parkway is longer than the Merced City Airport runway, and as wide. It's a drag strip from Bear Creek to Alexander. Believe me, come around 4 o'clock and bring your radar gun. It has other systemic issues. It appears to me, again, these are just impressions from listening to my neighbors and listening to you all, is that this plan that was put forth, ages ago was a good plan. It was viable. It had some foresight for some possible monies in the future. But the city's growth now, especially with the university, has accelerated far beyond this plan. And so what was once low-hanging fruit for maybe a bridge or maybe some more money for widening, that ship has sailed. So now we need to revisit these other ideas. You're not going to get these bridges. There's so many things are not approved. If we're not going to vote today or in some future time to just remove it, strip it completely from the plan, let's marginalize it for another decade or so and see what the unknown developer comes out and says, okay, well, I'm going to put my cards on the table. Because there is something or someone is out there pushing this, and it's certainly not anyone on Parsons. But thank you very much for your time, and thank you, Councilman.
Mayor, I have one more request to speak for him from Mike Mason.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I came here tonight because as one of those city council members who supported this project and continues to support this project, I felt that someone needed to be here to speak on behalf of the Parsons project. We faced, when I was on the council between 1983 and 1989, we had crowds much like this. But our function as city council members was to plan for the future of this community and to provide for this community the infrastructure that was going to be needed for the future growth and development. I think we did that. From 1959 until this council, the council has continuously supported the Parsons project. Now, we all knew that money was going to be an issue. We couldn't build out Parsons without the bridge. The city didn't have the money to do that. And that's why it has remained in this hiatus ever since that time. I don't know where or when that money is going to come from. I do know this. The problems with this, with the major north-south corridors in this community are not going to go away because you wish them to go away. R, M, G are far worse today than they were when I was on the council. And they're going to get worse. And that was the reason why previous councils acted as they did to move forward with this corridor. I don't think anything about that has changed. Are there problems with the corridor? Absolutely, as there are problems with every other corridor. There's no simple solution to resolving this infrastructural problem. The campus parkway is not in the city of Merced. It's not part of our plan. The city of Merced isn't going to pay for it. And it may be a couple of decades before we see anything come to fruition as far as its development. It's the job of the council to plan for the future of all of the community. I want to address specifically the concerns that Parsons is going to turn into somehow a racetrack for vehicles and an unsafe area. I would point out to you that our street, which is one of our major north-south corridors, passes right by Fremont Elementary School and Rivera Junior High School. And I don't recall hearing a great many complaints from the residents in those areas that it imposes an unreasonable burden upon them in terms of the use and enjoyment of their property. John, I've known you a long time. I have a great deal of respect and admiration for you and for the paper you put out for this community, largely at your own expense, for these many years. But we've been talking about Parsons and this corridor since 1959. On no fewer than 22 occasions over that, the council has reviewed this project. And like many other projects, there are people who are directly impacted, and the council knows that. They're frequently visited by constituents who are not happy with their decisions. But the council's job is to act on behalf of the entire community. And it's my view that my colleagues and I, though all of those that have served up there where you are since 1959 into the present time, have done their diligent work in following through on what was necessary for the growth and development of this community, and that we needed this major north-south corridor. We considered the McKee corridor, and we ruled it out for a variety of reasons that there's no point in my going into now. The fact is that the council has many councils, not just the council in which I serve. I was only one member of that body. The council since 1959 have agreed that this is the process that we should be undertaking. That's what you elect people for. And I think that they've done right by you, and you should stand with the decisions that those councils have made. Thank you.
Is that all the slips you have? Okay. Just a couple of comments, and then council will convey in this thing. Talk about the speeding that's going on. If this is removed as an arterial, you'll be allowed to put speed devices on the road. Just like they did on, what's the name of the street? Rambler. They put 3 sets of speed bumps, if you want to call them, or plateaus. And I went over those things, and if you have anything but a truck with a lift kit, you're going to bottom out your vehicle if you go more than 20, 25 miles an hour. Those are extremely effective. But as long as it's an arterial, you can't do that. If it becomes a regular street, and granted, you'd have to pay yourselves, because they did too, you can put more than just traffic calming devices on the street. You can put speed limiting devices. Yes, G is busy. That's why I've been fighting since 1996 to synchronize the signals, and we're going to get that done this year. That'll help that traffic flow tremendously, of course. And 16th Street is right behind it. And hopefully someday we'll get Olive. I could really use it. The mention of 4 lanes for McKees, I only did that because I recall that being part of the mitigated traffic declaration to mitigate the extra traffic created by the Moraga development. I didn't believe at the time that was going to happen. I think the other mitigated traffic declaration had Parsons going to 99. And of course, I didn't believe that was going to happen. That's the main reason I voted no on that development, because the traffic mitigation declaration was fantasy. And it still would be if somebody brought it back that way. I travel McKee a lot at different times of the day. It's a little congested, the work traffic. You could probably stand a signal at Olive and McKee to regulate some traffic, but it's not that bad. It's not like a roaring mess every day. Yeah, it's probably busier than it was 20 years ago. I think all the streets are. The supported by all the council since 1959. That's kind of bothered me. It's like a ship, and you just can't turn it off. It just goes and goes and goes, and staff goes and goes and goes because they say, well, council supports this project, to me, this was the first of all the 8 years I spent on the council, and since beginning of 2012 as mayor. To me, this is the first time a council has really had a knockdown, drag-out debate, if you will. Sounds like they did in 1993. The people were told it's dead. I mean, Bernasconi was quoted in the paper, we're not going to do that. Well, that doesn't happen. They should take it out of the general plan. It's going to pop up sooner or later. Mr. Mason guaranteed it would happen 10 or 12 years from now, practically. Money, Mr. Spriggs said, if we're ready, why the heck are we going to get ready for the Bear Creek Bridge instead of Campus or 59? Those are job creators. All that land along 59 behind the developments, the housing developments, all that dirt can be businesses if there's better access to them. That's jobs. And we're supposed to be focusing on jobs. Campus Parkway past the University Industrial Park is jobs. That should be our number one priority. Continuing to fool around and spend time on a project that I don't know whenever would get funded and not let people deal with their neighborhood the way they'd like to, putting in traffic calming devices or speed bumps or put plants in the middle of the street or whatever they want to do. It's their neighborhood and they should be allowed to do that. So I wasn't persuaded by those that said, well, I knew that was going to happen when I bought my home. I don't know when they thought it was going to happen because we don't have $50 or $60 million. And like I said before, if we did, they would go to Campus Parkway. It wouldn't go to Parsons, for God's sake. So just to kind of clean up things and things that I heard. I don't know anything about Palo Alto, but I do know East Palo Alto is practically a ghetto. I can see why they could jam a 4-lane road down. People would hardly get up in the morning to do anything. So that's all I know about Palo Alto, except they have a beautiful university there. Comments by council? Doesn't sound like or look like. Councilor Merced.
Yeah, First off, I'd like to thank everybody for coming and giving us their research and their opinions on this project. Initially, I voted against this going forward with this project, and then I voted for purchase of land because you could always sell the land. Since that time, I've heard a lot of talk, both from the residents, from people that aren't living there, and other people in the community. And sad thing about it is I actually have more questions now than I did the first time around. And I'd really like to see if the city manager can answer a question for me. When was the last time that we had somebody do the traffic circulation study for the general plan?
That was done probably about and not finding David, but I know that there's David. I know that the traffic element in the general plan was probably 5 years ago. 2009, 2010.
Okay. Rather than, I know this will upset the residents, rather than just eliminate it from the general plan, I'd kind of like to have somebody come in and look at that traffic circulation plan again and advise us as if Parsons Avenue is really where we ought to be focusing our attention, and maybe not someplace else, because there has been a lot of change since 1959. And that's what I'd kind of like to see happen before we move on with this. And like I said, I initially voted against this, but since that time, and I've talked to Mr. Padilla, Mr. Massengale, several of Mrs. Zucconi, and some other people that live over there. And like I said, I've got more questions now than I had before. And I'd really like to see somebody come in and advise us as if this is really where we ought to be or where we shouldn't be, and then we can move on from there.
Just a quick question on follow-up. If someone were to do that, do they ever consider feasibility, practicality, and funding as part of the circulation plan, or just bare plans?
For me, I'd like to see all of it included in that.
If it's put into if it's requested of the consultants, they will provide you with that analysis. And it probably would require some additional surveys, but that's not because it's undoable, it's just a little more complicated.
Would they also need to know what priority this council is giving that project versus others? Or doesn't that make any difference?
Well, I mean, the question is what is the purpose of the study? And if it's to eliminate Parsons, then that's obviously you're going to have to find mitigation for north-south corridors, which is a different question than what I'm hearing Mr. DeSetti talk about. So it really is going to be dependent upon what you want out of the study.
Mr. Mayor, City Manager, what I would like to see out of the study is exactly that. Should we eliminate it from the plan? Is it still a viable roadway as that was determined to be back in 1959? Or what should our actions be? If we need to get rid of it, then we get rid of it. So what are the alternatives if we do get rid of it? And where do we go from there? So that's where I'm coming from.
Councilmember Murphy.
Thanks for being here tonight. These are tough meetings. This isn't why you run for council, so you can get all your friends in a room and disappoint half of them. Because whatever we decide, there'll be some disappointment. And I'm just your neighbor. We see each other at the grocery store, or or Little League games or at church. And so, for a couple hours each month we get up here on the dais, but that's the only difference. So, we live and work just in the same place you guys do, in the city of Merced. And there's been a lot of talk about the schools, and I've got twins that go to Ada Givens, and they've been there since kindergarten. I've got a sixth grader that doesn't go there anymore, but went there, and I went there as a kid when I lived on Story Avenue, and then later when I lived on East 26th. And I was there last year when, during field day, I had to call 911 on my cell phone because a girl needed some assistance, and I was happy, and she was very fortunate that there was access on Parsons Avenue in that gap that we approved, which was controversial a couple of years ago, because trying to get in just at the swimming pool area is a real choke point. I've got a nephew and a niece that go to Chenoweth, and I think that's a more problematic area. I think we have to think long and hard about that one. I'd say Parsons Avenue is not ready in its current state by Chenoweth. We've got to figure that out. And to my knowledge, we don't have a plan yet, at least that I've heard. Whether that's traffic calming around there or widening, but something clearly would have to be done there. As we talk about alternatives, I think that McKee Road, that's never been the plan. So to try and shift traffic from Parsons to McKee is not equitable. Campus Parkway is a big part of our future, and we're on a 1 mile grid system, and Parsons is that 1 mile spot, and Campus Parkway is that 1 mile spot. Parsons Avenue is 94 feet wide. We talked about Highway 59 and mention of the bridge. These guys know that I've talked a lot about Highway 59 and the bridge. I've been talking about that for a long time. It's a state highway, and so we don't have control over what happens there. We'd very much like to have those two bridges widened north of Olive. And in fact, my son was riding home in the school bus, and his school bus was run off the road by a semi-truck on that bridge. So I just want to say that it's not an either or. I mean, these are things that need to happen. Highway 59 is a state highway, not a city street where we have jurisdiction over it. I think our task up here, and I hope that you would agree, is that we need to be even, whatever decision we make needs to be even and fairly distributed when we talk about traffic. And that's sort of the approach I take. I think if that means readjusting, I don't think we need to stick to something just because we've done it. I think we need to, take a look at it with a fresh set of eyes. I'm open to doing that. But when I ask myself the question whether Parsons would, if it were put through, would be an even and fair distribution of traffic, on the question of being even, the answer to me is yes, because it's on that 1 mile grid. And to whether it's fair, I think it is a fair decision in that road in most places is 94 feet wide. And the homeowners have been on notice that there's a potential that this will be put through at some point. And the unfortunate thing about the whole discussion tonight is we don't have a project that's going to happen tomorrow that we can talk about or look to. I mean, this is all very much still in the future. But if we're talking about taking this, doing away with a project on paper and spending $300,000 to $500,000 just to take something away on paper, that doesn't pencil for me. So I don't think Parsons is something that's going to happen in the near term. I think I align more with what was option 3, but would change it a little bit in that I think option 3 was presented as keep Campus Parkway and Parsons Avenue and 59 as priorities. I think we need to, prioritize those priorities, and I think Parsons is at the bottom. I'm not up here trying to advocate that we build a bridge tomorrow or an undercrossing, but I'm also not saying that we should spend that kind of money just to take something away on paper that we don't really even have.
Councilmember Blake.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll make my comments brief. I think it's been covered in quite some detail. I came into this with an open mind tonight. After listening to everybody, I would have to say that I concur with most of what the mayor's presentation was earlier. I've made a point of it, especially recently, to drive Parsons as often as I possibly could. And one of the distinguishable things that I see between Parsons and G, M, and R as arterials, the most obvious thing is that Parsons is primarily residential, where GM and R are at best sporadically residential with a lot of businesses along those thoroughfares. And of specific concern to me, being in a field where I've witnessed a lot of traffic-related tragedies, is the Chenoweth strip of Parsons. It's very narrow. I've been on that street in different periods of time during the day when school is out, when the kids are coming to school, and I don't see a solution to that. I mean, you can't widen it. You can't take part of the school. I don't think it's feasible to take the homes. I just don't see that as being a real viable option. So for me, I guess the major concern with having driven it and really spending a lot of time thinking about it is the safety of pedestrians and traffic, and especially the schools that are in that area. And specifically to me, of specific concern is the Chenoweth school area there. Thank you.
Councilmember for Joseph.
Thank you, and thank you everybody for coming out tonight. I think it's good to get all of these opinions. I think something that we have to hear, and I think it's important that we address these. I agree with a lot of what Councilmember Murphy said, and I've made my points before that. The reality is, like he said, we don't have a project right now. And I've been up here and I've advocated very strongly for Campus Parkway and believe very strongly that Campus Parkway should be our #1 priority moving forward, and we should do everything we can. But that doesn't mean that we should take our eye off the ball if something becomes available. And we have to keep all of our options open. We don't have a project. This isn't something that we're voting on to do right now. It's pretty much saying we are staying focused on finding an alternative or finding another north-south alternative in the city. Like Councilmember Murphy, I'm open to a fresh set of eyes to see if there's something we can do. Just because it's been on there doesn't mean we have to do it. But I think that there has been numerous discussion about we've gone through general plan amendments. We've had these priority planning sessions where we've been able to bring this up for discussion, and it hasn't come up to take it out until just recently at the mitigated negative declaration. One of the things, and I appreciate and I understand where the majority of the arguments are coming from, and why people feel this way. It's something that affects day to day. But I also believe that for far too long we've almost become we've become reactionary as opposed to continuing to plan for the future. And it was said earlier that as leaders, it's our job to change as we see fit, and it's our job to look at how's this going to benefit or how's this going to negatively impact. Well, I think as leaders, it's also our job to set the direction and set the course for the city of Merced. And we have to look, what is Merced going to look like 10, 15, 20 years from now? We know that we're not going to complete this project overnight. I don't think that's ever been said. But we do know that it has been policy. It's been on the books. It's something that people have known about. It's something that we've continued to work for. It's something that hasn't been until recently pulled off when we've had opportunities to bring it up. And I think I just don't think that is right. I think if we have a project and we look at this, we have to look at what's best for the community. I don't think, I think option 3 is the best because it allows for us to really plan and really kind of, look at all possibilities, look at all options so that we understand what's going to happen. And I understand and I applaud the mayor quite a bit for bringing me up and really advocating for, synchronizing the lights on 16th or 16th and G. But ultimately that doesn't alleviate the number of cars that will be traveling on there. It'll increase the flow, but they're still going to have more cars that are going to be direct on those. Those are old streets, and we can't continue to force onto those. The other thing is there are unintended consequences, and I understand that. You look at the people in the Ragsdale neighborhood. We say, let's put it onto McKee. Well, it's going to affect McKee. It's going to affect Ragsdale. It's going to affect, there's a lot of different impacts this is going to happen to. And like Mike said, it just looks like it's equitable. It's a 94-foot road. It's been built. It's unfortunate that planning was allowed to have driveways that back onto there, and that's not something that we can change. But something that we can do is we have to provide a course and provide direction for the city moving forward. And unfortunately, it's not the most popular decision amongst the people in the audience, but that's what we have to do, in my estimation, is provide for the direction moving the city forward. And I think that if we don't, we're setting ourselves up to fail.
Councilmember Long.
Thank you, Mayor. First of all, I would like to thank each and every one of you for coming tonight, express your opinion. I appreciate to hear your concerns. Second, I know that you elected me to represent you, but sometime I will certainly make decisions that will certainly negatively impact your lifestyle. And in this case, seems like it's very difficult. I really have difficult time making decisions that affecting you. And I don't like to do that. But, sitting here, I have no choice. Only 2 buttons for me to vote, yes or no. So, but looking at this issue, I think that for the mayor to say that he didn't know anything about it and bring for all staff, I think, I personally take responsibility for staff working on this project because in the past we told staff to work on this project. If we have not told staff to do it, they would not do it. Our former mayor, Bill Sprigg, and our former council member, Mason, they certainly discuss about these issues in the past. Our previous council member, mayor, they have great vision for Merced. And I think it's important for us, current council member, need to look at that also. If I look at G Street, east of G is half of the population. West of G is half of the population. And east of G, we don't have any arterial road or street going north and south. West, we have M Street, R Street, and then also Highway 59. So our general plan, Merced Vision 2030, certainly plan for growth toward UC Merced. And I think that to eliminate Parsons totally from our general plan would be a disservice for our community. But our former Bill Spriggs said it's very important that we need to be prepared. If anything's come up, we need to be able to get our hands on. And I think that, many times in the back room, we told staff that, we told our staff that, go ahead and proceed with the process. We need to be ready because the future, certainly, Merced future will certainly grow into the UC Merced area. And we need to be prepared on that also. And, to say that half of the population doesn't have that kind of north and south access, I think it's important for our current council or future council to really think about our future, our children, our grandchildren, that, will be living in Merced. So I hate to disappoint you, because you elected me, and then I will also turn my back on you. I really hate that, okay? But I think for the benefit of our future, Merced future, I think we keep that continue on the book as it was planned back in 1959 up until now. I think it would be a good idea for our future also. So I certainly support option number 3. We need to keep that on the book, and whenever possible, grant available, we need that we can get our hands on. We need to get that. We talk about McKee to be an option, other option. McKee, half of the street is county, half of the other side is city. And if we're going to consider that, we need to negotiate with the county also. And I don't think that county will allow that, because all those property on the other side is 180 lot. And we consider that to be our part, it would be very difficult. So again, I look at all the people north of Bear Creek, from G to McKee, that need some kind of north and south access. I think it would be a good idea for us to keep that in the book. We don't know that we're going to build the bridge tomorrow. Only a few politicians that doesn't want to receive state and federal grant, but I certainly want that if anything's possible, we want to get our hands on. We need to. We tried for Campus Parkway for 2 years, and we didn't succeed on that. We don't know whether the bridge will be succeed or not. Okay, but we need to keep it in the book. So option 3 is very possible for us to do now. So if no other question, I would like to make a motion that we.
There's other people that want to talk first, if you would. Just one thing, if you're speaking about who said what in closed session, I think you should change that we to I, because you're putting words in people's mouths that were spoken in closed session, which may not be exactly what you said, if you don't mind. Councilmember DeSetti.
Yes, just for clarification, Mr. Bramble, In your staff report, you have option number 3. So the City Council directs staff to reevaluate Parsons Avenue as part of the transportation element. This would be done through the general plan amendment, environmental impact review in 2 to 3 years, once the campus parkway funding and planning is completed. Is that different from your option 3 that you had in your PowerPoint tonight?
Yes, unfortunately, and I can't blame Novus as the culprit, but I tried to do my Novus report in 2 segments, and so the report that I have on the PowerPoint is actually what it was supposed to say in the written report. I apologize.
So when somebody says option 3, I'd like to know exactly what the option 3 is.
And
if it's
would
not
it
the staff
include
report.
what you asked for as far as a study? Is that
Correct, because this option 3 in the staff report says exactly what I would like to see done with the study to see, we study the viability of Parsons Avenue being this arterial, and we do the study and it comes back, well, no, that's out, it shouldn't be there anymore. Where do we move the traffic to?
Sorry. Actually, I believe that the option 2 is kind of where you were going. If you don't mind, John, go to 2. Excuse me. There. So what 2 does is it does take another look at Parsons Avenue. It may not do exactly what you were asking, but obviously council has the authority and the discretion to add to or subtract from any options that staff provide to you. So what I'm hearing you ask is, based upon your previous discussion, that the staff pull together a consultant's study to look at Parsons Avenue as to its role in the general plan, and are there alternatives and what are the consequences, correct?
That's correct. Okay. Specifically with if they determine Parsons Avenue is not viable, where do we move the traffic to? In other words, where else do we go?
Okay.
Councilmember Pedroza.
Yeah, again, and my question was about clarifying option 3 again, because I think option 3 is the best. I just don't think that we can delay or spend money on a consultant to go out and look at this when this is something that we've studied, we've planned for, we've looked at the right one. I think that by getting into consultants and getting to this, we delay. If something becomes available, then we're not ready for it. I think that it just continues to kick the can down the road as opposed to just making a decision. I think that wastes a lot of time and potentially gives a lot of false hope. I don't agree with that.
Councilmember Murphy.
Yeah, I don't think we need to pay a consultant here to tell us about Parsons. I don't think we need to have someone. We need to pay someone to tell us about Parsons Avenue, whether to do it or not. I think we all live here in this community, and we know Parsons Avenue and the challenges that it has. And I say that because we don't have a project that's coming down the road. I mean, we pay a consultant, and then it's going to be stale by the time anything were to happen. So, with option 3, I would change it though, so that Parsons is the lowest priority. I'm curious to know, and this is a honest question. The mayor's defended purchasing properties. Do you want to keep doing that? I mean, you've sort of defended why you've done that with
I think we
Andre.
bought all we can buy.
Well, there's still a few missing pieces. So I mean, the question is, if anything happens with Parsons, it's going to be opportunistic deciding to buy things that come on the market or in foreclosure.
I'd have to determine what the market is now versus what it might be. Certainly, Mr. Baker's right. It was pretty cheap back when we did those parcels. They can be sold. They can be turned into a park. We can do anything with those things. I didn't see owning land as being a big detriment, regardless of whatever. As I said, I was very opposed to the paving of the gap. It's my understanding.
I just want to make sure we're on the same page. So you're saying,
don't put words in my mouth.
No, I'm asking.
You want me to say I won't support them? I won't. You're trying to make it sound like something else.
I'm trying to look.
So buying the properties is not supporting the Parsons project. Okay, it's clear as that.
Buying property in the right of way for Parsons is not supporting the Parsons project.
Not in my mind.
It's just
buying property.
So you're in favor of if staff has properties that come up in the right of way.
That means they're spending time that they could be spending time on something else. I don't want any more time spent on this, buying property or otherwise. Let's figure out how to get. We have now a $13 million hole we got to fill to get the next phase of Campus Parkway built. We need to spend every second of our brain to brainstorm how we're going to get that $13 million funded, not how to buy a piece of property for here. Okay, that's what I mean. It's just time spent for no purpose in the near future. Maybe 50 years. It's just so bizarre, the whole thing, really. And by the way,
because the land would actually be more valuable if you wanted to sell it if you had all the pieces. Because if you have broken up land like we do right now.
That would be something that could be looked at the time. But that's
the question.
I hate to think of time being spent on that when we got some really critical issues otherwise. On the 59 bridge, yes, right now it's a state road. There's nothing preventing us from funding the bridge. Caltrans isn't going to stop us. We have control over that in that respect. We might have to build it to state standards, which could be a little more expensive, but they've basically given up on that thing because of the AME and the new 59 that they're looking at. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't do anything to it. And we can if we want.
That's great. Yes.
Again, time should be spent looking at that solution and not parlaying a bunch of land for whatever reason.
Well, if you want to get your return on investment, you should have all the pieces.
That's not our business. We're not real estate brokers.
Oh, that's what it sounded like.
So I would like to make a motion that we keep option 3, keep Highway 59, Parsons, and Campus Parkway as our general plan. And whatever opportunity come up, we need to get a hand off.
I'll second that direction to staff. With Parsons having the lowest priority. I think we do need to spend time on Campus Parkway and 59, but I think Parsons needs to stay in there. So I'll second that, moving that to a lower priority.
Motion and second. Mayor and council members, please cast your votes.
Where's Mr. Bill Womany?
Mr. DeSetti, would you like to make a motion consistent with what you talked about earlier?
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion that I don't have it here. It's different than what Mr. Bramble. So if you could,
she's going to pull it back up.
Pull it up. The going to make a motion to direct the staff to prepare the fiscal year 2015-2016 budget with funding for transportation element review of the comprehensive system of arterial streets in an EIR.
Second.
Motion and second. Mayor and council members, please cast your votes. And the motion fails.
Well, that's very interesting. Councilmember Pedrosa.
I think that by positioning ourselves to prepare budget numbers when already we've requested city staff to put money aside to do a line item for youth council funding. We know that our increases in our retirement liabilities are going to increase. Healthcare costs are increasing. We have a lot of costs that are increasing, and yet we're going to add another cost to the city that I just don't think is necessary at this time moving forward. So I don't know how to amend the motion anymore besides the fact that we have number 3. It's the one that makes the most sense moving forward.
Just to you and 2 other people.
And you're absolutely correct.
There's only 3 that 2 agree with you.
I understand that. And I'm not saying that you should, that just like you said about putting words in people's mouth, I never said that. What I'm saying is it makes the most sense to me and 2 other people that we put this forward. And by your request of having a line item for a youth council with we assumed revenues
already funded
and to 12,500.
That's enough.
And
already funded.
Excuse me. And increased liabilities in retirement that you bring up, increased liabilities in healthcare that you've brought up in the past, I think is irresponsible for us to do so. So again, I will make the motion that we provide staff with direction going forward with option 3.
You know, without putting any kind of plateaus on priorities 1 and 2, we're basically doing nothing. Parsons has been the lowest priority since I became mayor. This isn't anything new. Campus Parkway and 59, maybe that wasn't there before. It should be now. I think it is. Just having it sit there, they're going to do things. They're going to buy property. They're going to run. Things get done. And maybe without a new study, they shouldn't get done. Nobody's really done a comprehensive study of those issues since before 93. The new AR, as far as the traffic circulation, is almost a carbon copy of 12, 13 years ago. There wasn't probably hardly any change, if anything. It just sits there. And yes, all the costs are going up. So is the cost of uncertainty to people. That's expensive too. That lowers the values of homes. That costs people money if they're going to sell their home. After this kind of exposure, this would be a bad time to sell until people forget. So there's always kinds of costs that go on. We don't even know how much. I mean, we might be talking $25,000 or $30,000. That's going to break the bank.
Mayor, do you want to make a motion for option 1?
What's that? Delete it from the general plan?
That's the only option that we have.
Okay, I'll motion number 1, delete it from the plan, and within 2 to 3 years, fund the new traffic study and EIR if necessary.
Second.
Motion and second. Mayor and council members, please cast your votes. And the motion fails.
No surprise.
Oh, actually, there's 4 votes there. So the motion passes, or it fails. Yeah.
No, it failed. So is there anybody willing to change their vote to do Mr. DeCitti's plan?
Mr. Mayor, if
Yes.
I may, could we table this and bring it back at the next council meeting when Mr. Belawamini is here and we have all 7 of us here?
I don't want to do that. Have all these people come back again and go through this. It's too much. if we can't do anything, and nobody's willing to flex a little bit on the issue, then we just won't get anything done tonight. And you can explain to all these residents why that happened, why government couldn't get anything done. Are we ever tired of that? Especially since 20 years ago, they said this project was dead. They killed it, and it still lives.
Just like your opinion that it was us and the other two that agree with my motions. Just like your assertion that government's not doing anything, we're trying to. We just can't reach a settlement.
And I think it's fair to point out that we're missing our seventh member, which would obviously make things a little easier.
When we scheduled this, he said he was going to be gone. Everyone agreed.
No, you're right. I'm just making an observation. You're correct.
So legally, if we just adjourn, then this just never happened. Yeah.
Thank you. There's been several motions and none of them have passed, so there'd be no action taken on this item this evening.
Right. So again, I'll ask. Anybody voted one way, want to change the other way? I guess we'll go on to agenda item L.
Agenda item L, business. Item L1, city council comments.
Don't get me started. Is your light for comments? Okay, Councilmember Bedrosian.
Thank you. I just wanted to comment that last week we, myself, Councilmember Murphy, Councilmember Lohr, and City Manager Bramble attended the League of California Cities in Los Angeles. Go ahead and wait for people to exit the building, or exit. We still have a meeting going on here. Just to continue, we're at the League of California Cities Conference in Los Angeles last week. Attended quite a few conferences, meetings in regards to economic development, what's happening with redevelopment, which is still an unknown, different budget planning sessions, and kind of moving forward. It was interesting to see what different cities are doing. There was quite a few cities that are doing stuff in regards to youth. Rancho Cucamonga is one that I brought information back from. The other city escapes me right now, but there was some good information that I've gone through, and I look forward to sharing moving forward.
Councilmember Murphy.
Yeah, I also had the opportunity to attend the League of Cities conference and took some good notes and attended some meaningful sessions. And one in particular that I found to be really timely was one on the California Voting Rights Act, and they had a couple of attorneys that are experts in the area, and they had a lot of not just the state of the law, but also they had a matrix of the different cities, and Merced was on there, that are in different points of either potential litigation or litigation under the Voting Rights Act. And so I walked away with a lot of insight, and also heard from one of the council members from the city of Palmdale. And they're now $3.5 million into it in terms of going to district elections. So it's it's something that's ahead of us, and I actually want to talk about that a little bit after we finish this business item. I want to talk about maybe a future agenda, but had the opportunity to attend the conference, got a lot of takeaways, some things to think about.
$3.5 million, are they getting anywhere?
Doesn't seem like it. There's a lot of frustration.
Is it fighting a lawsuit, or is it just for the demographics and setting it all up?
Lawsuit?
No, it's a lawsuit, but there's also, some cities have been through this more than once, where they've set districts and then they've been challenged. Even an African American was elected in the new district and it was still challenged. So there's just a lot of technicalities, and the attorneys are charging like $750 an hour, which is outrageous, and they're allowing them to charge a premium. There's also kind of an additional premium they get for what's considered to be unpredictable litigation, which isn't, I don't know how unpredictable that can be when the statute says you get attorney's fees, but it's something we really need to be thinking about.
And what's that premium?
I don't know.
Did you just say it was like 3 times their normal rate, so it'd be over $2,000 an hour?
It's crazy. Yeah.
Councilor Merced. Yes, a couple of things. First thing is I'd like to recognize Councilmember Murphy and past Councilmember Mary Michael Rawling for all the hard work they did on the 125th anniversary of the city of Merced. A lot of great events, starting last spring, this summer, and culminating with Mercy Gulch Days downtown last weekend. I'd kind of like to see Mercy Gulch Days hang around and be in conjunction with the fair like it was in the old days. The other thing is that last Saturday, if you were looking for something to do, you should have never, you shouldn't have had any problem with all the things going on. But I attended Love Merced, and that was a well-attended event, and it was held out at the fairgrounds this year. So it's a good deal, and thanks again, Mike.
Yeah, and just wanted to thank all the people that helped. Mary Michael and I were mentioned, but lots of folks helped, and it did reach back over several months. So thanks a lot. We got one here. Rick was involved for all 3 of the events, and I think he was probably the only one that did all 3. So
Commander-in-Chief of Downtown. Councilor Laura.
Thank you, Mayor. Again, I also have the opportunity to participate in the conference. One thing, again, on the voting right, I think, we are in Merced, we are very progressive and moving things forward very quickly. Hearing other cities, I think, it's kind of bad that they have to go through all that. One of the guest speakers really stuck my mind, in regard to for city to be inclusive, and I think he also mentioned all about our foster kids and all disabilities individuals, and to be inclusive in our plans and development. So I think that we need to certainly pay attention to those two.
Tony was right about lots of things to do Saturday. Saturday morning, I attended a ribbon cutting. I believe it's in the Amador Apartments. Affordable housing. Councilmember Pedroza and his dad were there also. Fabulous facility. They converted I guess what it used to be a community center, hall, whatever, into a child care facility. One of the best ones I've ever seen as far as facilities and capabilities. The woman and her husband who did this, she's getting her master's degree from San Diego State, I think, next weekend. And she's going to be running a thing. So she's very, very well educated and motivated. And it's really in the right place. It's going to serve a very large neighborhood that obviously needs that kind of service. Then my wife and I went over and had a breakfast cooked by the Rotaries. And then we spent some time with Mercy Gulch. We went over to the senior center. It was having a 60th anniversary lunch, tri-tip, etc. So we're going to come back. We were cooped down. It was already 101 degrees. So we didn't get back. I tried to talk Vern Warnke into jumping off the roof like he did 25 or so years ago in a gunfight. But he said elements of gravity has taken over his body. Didn't want to do it again. So it's probably a good thing he did. Anyway, thanks again for you and Mary Michael's help. I know that you have large committee meetings, and everybody in there had a different idea. So I congratulate both of you for herding large rooms of cats to get done. I know that wasn't easy. Thank you.
Am I excused from future committee assignments for some time?
But you're so good at it. I'll request to add an item to future agenda. Anyway, Councilmember Murphy.
I previewed this just a couple minutes ago, but we've got our district election coming up. Our election ballot measure is going to be on in November, asking the voters whether we want to go to district elections or not. And we know, and those that have been in the meetings where we've discussed it know that if it doesn't pass, that's not the end of the line. It simply means that rather than having the voters amend the charter, the pattern has been that it's been taken care of in the court system, and judges have imposed districts. So, and that's proven to be very costly. So, I think I'm not good at political forecasting, but I kind of felt like it was probably going to be a close vote. And I think that's especially true now that there's a con argument on the ballot. And so I wanted to bring back for consideration the possibility of allocating some money, $10,000 or $15,000, to an educational campaign that would have to happen pretty quickly, because even though typically the election day is in November, I mean, it really starts when absentee ballots go out. And so I wanted to see if there's support for that. I think it's critical. I think it's a situation where we could maybe spend a little money in order to save a lot of money. And I as much as I don't like the fact of spending money that we wouldn't want to spend otherwise, in terms of already having our budget figured out, I think it's the right thing to do. And I think it means we reconvene before October 6th or whenever our first meeting is to do that, because it's going to take some time to get this effort together if that's what we want to do.
Oh, I agree with that. I hope it's not close, but if it is, a little piece of education might make a difference.
As a council member, can we do that?
Do what?
Can we spend? So I'll let someone else weigh in, but I did.
Yes.
Yeah, so I did sort of run it up the flagpole a little bit, and I'm sure people have more detailed responses than I do. But we can get involved in education on what the issues are.
I mean, spend tax money to do education. What about the other side? Say,
It's not one side or the other. It's just education on what the facts are. As I understand it, we can't advocate a pro or a con in terms of budget. That's what I understand.
We went through this a couple times on the half-cent sales tax for transportation. And there's a fine line between advocacy and education. We have to make sure it was just education if we're using public funds. And I'm sure legal counsel will keep us straight on that if we want to do it. But we are out of time.
Yeah, so we're on a sort of critical path here, right? I mean, I don't think if it's something that we want to do, I don't think it's something that we wait until October 6th to do.
No, because the absentee ballots will already have been in the mail.
Yeah. That would not be money well spent if we wait that long.
Maybe we could time it with the other closed session we're going to schedule tonight.
I'd be okay with that. I think it's something we have to do.
Okay, do we want to move on and try to come up with a date for the next meeting?
Are we going to combine the?
Yeah, is there any reason not to do it?
Yes.
As long as it's public.
I think the combination would help give both the city attorney and staff enough time to give you the correct information, and we can handle it all in one session.
Okay. So we're looking for a date next.
I've got my calendar.
Can I interrupt for just 1 second, just so I understand? Are you talking about a date to put it on the agenda to determine whether or not you're going to spend money? Right, okay.
John, I know that Denise's on vacation. What are the dates that she's not available?
Actually, the Friday night and then the 29th. She won't be back on the 29th. So we could either do it the 24th or 25th or the 23rd, 22nd, in that range.
Can we meet this week?
Oh.
And I know it's an inconvenience and we've got busy schedules. I just think that it's one of those things that...
Do we have time to publish an agenda, all that?
Well, we need
3 days.
Thursday.
If it's a special meeting, we only need 24 hours.
And I'm fine with 3 days. I mean, I don't want to feel like people...
But if it's a special meeting, they can't take action. So it's got to be an adjourned meeting. So if you're going to do it, you should do it probably this Thursday.
You can't do this.
But we wouldn't. Yeah, we're not going to be ready for the closed session this week.
I think the 22nd works.
Next Monday night?
Next Monday, a week from tonight.
Is our HR going to be back?
She'll be here. It's the 29th that she wouldn't be here.
I can meet on the 22nd.
I'm okay with that.
22nd at 5:30?
Yeah.
So basically, we would have two items. We would have this item for consideration of a budget amendment, and then we would also have a closed session on labor negotiations.
Yes. Are we adjourning to that?
Yes.
Yes.
Councilmember Pedroso is going to adjourn in memory of Peter Fletch, so he's going to read a short bio.
Thank you. Like the mayor said, I'd like to adjourn this meeting in honor of Mr. Peter Fletch, who passed away suddenly last week, who was a stand-up member of the community for many years and was really a true pillar of the community. Peter Fletch, a longtime Merced insurance agency owner and civic leader, passed away Thursday, 9/11/14 from cardiac complications. He was 79. Born and raised in Merced, Mr. Fletch had built a name for himself in Merced while serving as president for Fletch & Busby Insurance Agency. Mr. Fletch was the third generation to run the century-old insurance company. Mr. Fletch was very active in the Merced community. He served as president in many local organizations: the American Cancer Society, Merced Chamber of Commerce, Independent Insurance Association, Merced Boosters, United Way, and Greater Merced Kiwanis, where he also held the position of lieutenant governor. He was a founding member of Merced Bank of Commerce and later on the board of directors for Valley Core Bank. He served his country as a member of the National Guard. Generations of young people knew Mr. Fletch as Santa as part of his Elks Club work. He would visit city schools, the Shelby Center, and other locations spreading Christmas cheer. In the 1980s, Mr. Fletch became general chairman of the Building Fund for St. Patrick's Catholic Church, which was dedicated in 1995. He was currently involved in SCORE, where he mentored many individuals towards business careers. He was a lifelong Boy Scout. In 1949, he received his Eagle Scout. He attended many jamborees, including the World Jamboree in Austria. In his earlier years, he was Scoutmaster for the Elks Chapter 1240. He was president of the Yosemite Area Council, where he recently was presented the Outstanding Eagle Scout Award from the National Eagle Scout Association. This summer, the local Boy Scouts honored Mr. Fletch for his dedication to scouting. Mr. Fletch is survived by his wife of 56 years, Catherine, and 5 children, Kathleen Moore, John Fletch, Christine Frey, Jeannie Bliss, and Doug Fletch, and 8 grandchildren. And anybody that knew Mr. Fletch knew that he passed on the love of his community to his children, and they're still here and very dedicated. So I'd like to adjourn in his honor.
Second.
Motion and second. Mayor and council members, please cast your votes.